As night turns to day at the 77th running of the 24 Hours of Le Mans, the sun has already gone down for several contenders. Eight-time champion Audi has seen two of its cars find the tires, while Peugeot is still suffering from the gremlins that cost him victory the last 2 years. We've been here for 15 hours, and we still have 9 more to go to decide the champion at the 2009 24 Hours of Le Mans. Daylight always brings a psychological lift in 24-hour races, but here at the Circuit de la Sarthe, daylight comes very, very early. It is 6 o'clock in the morning with 9 long hours of racing still to come in the 77th running of the 24 Hours of Le Mans live here on Speed. Hello again, everyone. I'm Bob Varsa, along with Dorsey Schrader and Calvin Fish. Justin Bell down in the pit lane. We are beginning to gear up to take you all the way to the checkered flag and beyond here at Le Mans. It has been a long night. We're back under green after 2 exceptionally long safety car periods totaling over 2 hours. And as you can see, cars beginning to fall by the wayside. 10 cars officially out of the race at this point. The number 30 machine, the Piccini, Bobby, Biaggi, Lola, Judd in the LMP2 class is stranded, and that is just downhill from the Dunlop Bridge at the very beginning of this 8.5-mile true road course. That particular part of the track was also the scene of a major accident. It's a part of our Valvoline race recap as we bring you from the very start of this race up to the minute. At the start, it was Peugeot and Audi across the front row. Frank Montagny getting the drop on Allan McNish. A couple of laps in, Alex Premat in the number 3 Audi got over exuberant into the Indianapolis corner and hit the tire wall. Problems for Peugeot as well. Pedro Lamy trying to exit. Jean-Christophe Bouillon in the Pescarola version trying to enter. You see the Pescarola mechanic trying to warn Lamy, but it was too late. Damage to that car. It has not entirely recovered. In hour 2, problems for Audi once again. Allan McNish got into the back of a car on a restart that braked sooner than he expected, damaging the nose on that car, putting the mechanics to work once again. In hour 5, watch the Aston Martin Lola of Stuart Hall come across, smacking Tim Graves' LMP2 category car into the wall. Extensive damage. And the stewards decided that Hall had caused an avoidable accident. He was expelled from the event, leaving his team with only 2 drivers in that car. In hour 6, the GT2 class pole sitter, Seth Neiman behind the wheel, suffered a punctured tire. He had to wobble around. GT2 has been a great battle all day long. Sebastien Bourdais had a brief time in the lead in his home race until his car needed a left rear reconstruction. The Peugeot team got it done in 9 minutes, sent him on his way. They are still in contention. Lucas Luhr, with the daylight fading, took his number 2 Audi off hard into the tire wall. His boss, Wolfgang Ullrich, simply could not believe it. The Audi team had very little test time in their all-new R15s, and it has shown as they seek their 9th win. Luhr could not continue. Hour 11, darkness fully fallen. Allan McNish in the number 1 Audi, the defending race champions, was being challenged by the Peugeots. That battle went on lap after lap. McNish would not let the Peugeot by, but eventually he had to pit. One of a succession of pit stops for the Audis to get the radiators cleaned out. Close call there for Johnny O'Connell, looking for his 4th class win in the Corvette, colliding with the number 13 LMP1 car. And then this, just about 3 hours ago, a heavy crash just south of the Dunlop Bridge. Benoit Treluyer in the Pescarolo Peugeot was taken to the hospital conscious, and we have no further update on his condition. But as you can see, the car was totally destroyed, leading to the first of 2 long safety car periods. Here are the current class leaders: David Brabham, Marc Gené, and Alex Wurz in the number 9 Peugeot, followed by the team car of Sebastien Bourdais, Frank Montagny, and Stefan Sarrazin, who put that car on pole for the 3rd straight year. And then the first of the Audis for Capello, Christensen, and teammates. In the P2 class, Emmanuel Collard was the class pole sitter in the 31 Porsche RS Spyder. That car and a similar car of Ara, Kunamoto, and Maassen have shared the LMP2 lead since the start of this race. No other car in class has had a sniff of it, but the 5 car has spent a long time in the garage area, so the 31 now dominates that class. In GT1, it's been all Corvette C6Rs from the start of the weekend. The Garcia Magnussen O'Connell car has led basically from the very start of the race, as Johnny O'Connell seeks to become the first American to win 4 times at Le Mans. And in the GT2 class, as I said, it has been a scrimmage through the first 15 hours of this race. Currently, the Ferrari 430 of Caffarmelo and Salo, the defending class champions, is out front. Now let's go to Justin Bell in the pit lane.
Good morning, everyone. What a beautiful morning it is. Good morning, everyone. What a beautiful morning it is at Le Mans, the track. You know, when you wake up in the morning, Bobby said it very well, it gives you a second wind. The teams, I mean, right now, they don't look like it. Most of the mechanics are lying down and sleep. But everyone gets that little spring in their step. And I can tell you as a driver, when you're out there, you get that sort of second wind, and you know that you're going to be on way to the end of the race, although it's like 10 hours away. But it was almost a very, very sobering start to the race. As you just heard the morning session, as you heard that there was that accident with Trulio in the number 16 PlayStation car, and it looked so horrific. And for those of us that have been around racing a long time, sometimes it's an accident that just looks as though it's going to take it to the other side of anywhere nice. And all our breaths were held, and sheets were up around the car, and there was no information really coming through right up until now, when Pescarolo was able to say he's been to see Trulio in the hospital and he is okay. How he's okay, I don't know. It's a testament to the strength of the Peugeot chassis. That would have been an awful thing, wouldn't it, guys, to have had Peugeot potentially win this race and then had the pole of sort of a fatality over them. But it didn't happen. But it is a sobering reminder that this is not a game. This is probably one of the most extreme sports that any man can take part in. But it's a beautiful morning, and I'm very happy to be able to say that, guys.
All right, thanks very much, Justin. We won't even think about fatalities. It is not in the picture, and I cannot emphasize that too strongly. Benoit Trullier challenged the integrity of this car the biggest possible way. We have no footage of the actual accident because many of the cameras go quiet during the nighttime hours here at Le Mans. But you could tell from the wreckage that it was a heavy, heavy impact, and he is a very lucky racing driver.
Actually had some trouble at first when they got to the wreck, determining what that car was. There wasn't enough left of it around there to get a number off of it. As you can see, it was just the driver's compartment left. Quite an amazing situation.
Meanwhile, up front, Sebastien Bourdais in the number 8 machine is now on the same lap as Marc Gené. He's almost a lap down, but last time by the stripe, it was 2 minutes 53 seconds was the lead of the number 9 car of Gené behind the wheel over Sebastien Bourdais. So the 8 car seems to have a little bit more pace than the 9, but just under 3 minutes, Dorsey. That's a long way to catch up, but any sort of niggly problem, any delay in the pits, any slight repair, any cleaning out of the radiators, that will be gone in a heartbeat.
Well, Bourdais been pushing really hard to catch up here. Now that it's daylight, you can do that again. You know, you can see they've taken that 2 hours that Bob talked about to not only just get rid of the cars that were on the side of the road, but to clean this racetrack up, which was really quite a mess after just the evening's amount of driving. So now with the track clean, you see some debris flag right here. It's a good time to charge. It's a good time. It's still cool in the morning, and it's a good time to really put the hammer down, try to catch up if you need to.
Notice on the left side of your screen, on the shoulder of the road, there is a Porsche race car parked there. It has been there for hours. As Dorsey mentioned, they used one of the safety car periods to do an extensive track cleanup. Some of the debris on that track, I'm sorry to say, came from the number 80 Porsche, the Flying Lizard car that started on pole thanks to Jörg Bergmeister. During Darren Law's stint under the safety car, the car somehow went straight through the first chicane on the Mulsanne, the PlayStation chicane, the right, left, right. Heavy damage to the car. We haven't seen any footage of it either on track or in the pits. It was in 31st overall, 6th in the GT2 class before the accident. We're not sure whether that car will make it to the checkered flag, but we'll be looking for it. Here's the number 10 car, another car with a long story to tell, much of it involving long stints in the garage era. Tiago Monteiro of Portugal, Stefano Ortelli, a former winner of this race overall, and Bruno Senna, nephew of the late three-time Formula One world champion Ayrton Senna, on the driver's strength.
Well, both these drivers have had severe incidents in this car. Ortelli dropped a wheel going into Tête Rouge relatively early in the race, tearing off the rear wing and such, and Bruno Senna also had an off with other damage to the car. So the Oreca team have certainly been working hard here to keep this 10 car mobile, and right now there must be some kind of issue. They've done the driver change, but the car's gone back into the garage where they feel they need to get more than the mandatory 4 mechanics around this thing to get a quick fix done.
14th in the overall, 10th in class at last report. And this is something we have seen over and over and over again during the night. Car after car being pushed back into the garage for extensive attention by the mechanics.
Of course, a lot of that because of the new rule of having only 2 pit men over the wall, and only one of those can do a tire change with 1 air gun. So anytime you need to do anything at all of any extent, you need to bring it back into the garage. So we've had more of activity than we've ever seen back behind the wall, if you will.
And as we've heard at least one driver say, the canceling of the test day 2 weeks before this year's 24 Hours of Le Mans helped ensure that this track would be very, very green when the cars finally arrived. Green and dusty.
And now they're taking the back end of the car off. This is sustained damage, as you said, Calvin, to the back end first as it was backed into the wall, but then up into the front end. I think they had to replace the under tray, certainly the nose, the splitter.
What a shot that is. Bob, you've obviously covered Formula One for so many years, and you see those colors on the helmet and those eyes there.
Yep. He is the spitting image of his uncle.
Eyes.
Yep, no question about it.
And what a nice young man. Lee and I spent some time with him this week at Scrutineering, and just super friendly, and spoke about his racing career, how he was enjoying go-karts, really spurred on by his uncle Ayrton. And then when Ayrton was tragically killed back in 1994, his grandfather, Ayrton's dad, said that's enough. Vivienne, who's Ayrton's sister, is Bruno's mother, continues to work with the Senna Foundation, and Bruno told me that now 9 to 10 million children in Brazil have been helped through the Senna Foundation. That's quite a tribute to Ayrton's life.
Here's the number 16 Pescarolo Sport, the lone remaining entry for French racing icon Henri Pescarolo. This is the Judd-powered Spider, the open cockpit car for Bruce Giuani, Christophe Tinso, and Joao Barbosa.
They've had a great run here today, currently in 7th spot, second of the petrol-powered cars. That mantle is currently held by the 007 Aston Martin. They've had a great run here, now in 4th, so everyone thought this Pescarolo would be quick, but the Aston's a little bit of an unknown quantity, and they've had their problems throughout the course of the 24 hours with the 008, and particularly the 009 that got into problems there with Stuart Hall behind the wheel, especially. But the 007 has had a great run, so there'll be a lot at stake for these boys as they follow the Diesels home.
Careful examination of the brake discs. Barbosa out of the car.
And he is a real talent. Certainly seen him over the years at Le Mans, and recently in the Grand Am Series put in some spectacular performances.
I'm sure he and his teammates have wanted to know about the condition of Benoit Trélier, their teammate in the other car. And the news, as you've heard, is guardedly optimistic. This is the number 7 car. Currently shown in 11th place. This is the Pedro Lamy machine that had that bizarre and embarrassing incident colliding with the privateer Pescarolo Peugeot very, very early in this race.
That is, Dorsey, I mean, you must just, as a driver, sit back and think about what an innocent kind of moment in pit lane has really just put you in a hole that you can't climb out of.
It's amazing, of course, when that happened, and we didn't show the aftermath of it. It cut the tire down, and that was just leaving pit lane, so it had to do 8.5 miles. Of course, the tire delaminated and just beat the entire back of the car up, including the turbocharger and all of the bodywork on the left rear side. So it was a lengthy repair job, no doubt about it.
They have had to battle their way back. As I said, 11th, both in the overall and in class right now. We'll show you the class leaders in the overall class leaders. P1, P2, GT1, and GT2 will be back to Le Mans. Welcome back live to Le Mans. Bob Varsha, Dorsey Schrader, Calvin Fish, and Justin Bell with you. While we were in break, Marc Gené in the race leading number 9 Peugeot exited the pits alongside Mr. Le Mans, Tom Kristensen, in the number 1 Audi. Kristensen desperate to make up one of the 2 laps he is down to the race leader. Kristensen runs in 3rd place, hoping for his record-extending 9th overall victory in this race, but he has a lot of work to do with his teammates in the remaining 8 hours and 40-plus minutes here at Le Mans.
And the bad news is that Marc Gené just drove right on away from him like he wasn't even out there. So
that he did.
Of course, Marc's been in the car, and Tom just has gotten in the car. So like Calvin and I were talking about that before. That makes a little bit of difference, getting your rhythm back going again and so forth. But it's not really the all story. The real story is that Peugeot has just been dominant on speed. They've just outrun the Audis, period.
There's the running order in class across the top of your screen in the LMP1 category. A 2-lap gap from Gené back to 3rd place Kristensen. In between them, Franck Montagny in the number 8 Peugeot is now 1 lap down to his race-leading teammate. So Gené, Montagny, and Kristensen each running on a lap of his own. Then it's a 5-lap margin back to Stefan Muka in the 007 Lola Aston Martin, and in 5th place Nicolas Lapierre in the Oreca Matmut number 11. 3 laps behind Muka's Lola Aston Martin. Let's go to Justin Bell.
Well, a man that's done more work before breakfast than most of us. Dindo, that was a very solid couple of hours in the car. How did it feel out there?
Yeah, actually, it was a little bit boring because I did many laps behind the pace car. I think I spent probably half of my time in the car behind the pace car, and that was not so good because everything get cold and tire break. It was not easy to keep the concentration. The problem was that we had to go to the garage a few times. Unfortunately, we had some loss of power due to the air intake full of debris, and that's why we had to came in a few times and try to get rid of it. And sometimes the car was running okay, some other laps was running not okay. Then it's not easy to be consistent because between laps there can be a huge difference in power, and that is not easy. Sometimes you are very good cornering, and then you see that in the straight you are losing quite a lot. Then the next lap you see that on the straight you are gaining. It's difficult to judge even for us from the cockpit.
And when you've run near the Peugeot out there, are you surprised by the pace that they can run in the morning, or they're running very well?
Yeah, it looks like they can run. They pace they would like to run, because sometimes they can spend a few laps behind us, and then when they decide to pass, they just pass on the straight very easily.
That's a great update. Thank you, Dindo. Go and get some sleep. Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks, Justin. As you can see, the sun now over the horizon here at Le Mans. Lots of glare for the drivers to deal with as they head up under the Dunlop Bridge.
And Dindo is such the perfect teammate. 3 very different personalities on that number 1 team. You've got the fiery Scott, who always seems to be on edge. You've got the calm, collected TK, and then the super friendly, almost laid back Dindo Capello. But together, they are formidable. But they've got a lot of work to do to chase down this man. Exactly 2 laps down right now. We saw on that last round of pit stop exchange, all 3 leaders who were within 1 lap in terms of when they're pitting. But the number 9 car currently holds almost a lap lead on the sister car, the number 8, and 2 laps over that single bullet in the Audi gun.
Well, I'll tell you, they're going to need some help, the Audi boys are, you know, in the way of catching a caution break or something going wrong with these Peugeots, because it's been seen since the start they cannot outrun it. On an out-to-out green flag situation, the Peugeot's got them covered on speed anyway.
And the fastest man on the track right now is 2nd place Franck Montagny in the number 8 Peugeot. His last lap, 3 minutes 24.844 seconds. It's about 2 seconds quicker than the cars around him.
These mechanics have earned their pay, and they're not done yet either, for that matter. This car's been completely rebuilt from front to back. And I think it's on its second go-round, actually.
Yeah, there must be some serious damage, because remember when Ortelli came in, they threw Senna in the car, wheeled it back into the garage, and now Senna is out. And there are not too many guys working on that car right now.
No. Looks like a problem in the diff or something. They're working on the back axle, turning it.
Remember, now you're not allowed to change the complete gearbox. We saw that revolutionary design on the R8 where they changed the whole gearbox in about 5 minutes or so. That was outlawed. Now you have to change all the internals, but something going on there at the end.
On board with Tom Christensen in the #1 Audi, trying to find some way to come to grips with Marc Gené up ahead in the Peugeot.
Fastest part of the racetrack there, under braking for the first chicane, the PlayStation chicane, in excess of 200 miles an hour. The Audi is reaching about 205, 206. Peugeot is about 211, and that's really the story, Doss.
Yeah, they got him on top end, no question about that. Look, one of the Porsche RS Spiders. These guys have had a great battle going out throughout the night.
Second place car in the LMP, or Le Mans Prototype 2 category, for Seiji Ara, former overall winner of this race. Keisuke Kunamoto, a 20-year-old Japanese rising star, and the estimable Sasha Maassen, so experienced in these cars as he approaches his 40th birthday.
This is the car that won here last year, the Van Merkstein car. It was purchased by Team Navigo, and certainly got some great pilots there and a great effort. Couple of offs, had 2 lengthy pit stops to repair the front end on that machine. Otherwise, these boys could have been in the lead right now. But it's been a ding-dong battle between the 2 Porsche RS Spiders. And when they came here last year, Dorsey, in the LMP2 class for the first time, everyone questioned whether that Porsche Spider would be reliable enough, and they answered that conclusively with a 1-2 finish.
GT1 class leader basically from the get-go, now in the pits. Antonio Garcia, will there be a driver change? I don't think I saw a driver run around to the door. The farewell to the GT1 class at Le Mans for Corvette, and they are making the most of it. Justin Bell is there.
They are making the most of it, Bob. It's really great to see this team. It's just the consummate professionals. They're not changing tires. They're obviously going to double stint. They may even be triple stinting these. We weren't here for their last pit stop. They have their, they top up some fluids with their little hydraulic pressured systems, and they get on with it. And they are really a team that you have to see continue in racing, because I think the way Gary Pratt has put this together is it's evolved into something of an international racing force. And they're going to go back to sleep again. That's what I love about these mechanics. They're up, they spring into action, and then it's as though someone pulls the power cable out and they go and lie down again. But it's all business as normal here for Corvette.
No question about it. 15th in the overall, as well as leading the GT1 category. Antonio Garcia just 25 laps roughly behind the overall race leader Marc Gené in the Peugeot.
What's remarkable about those 2 Corvettes, wherever you see them, they are always so close. Fastest lap of the race today between the 2 cars is a 3:54.0 for the 63 and a 3:54.1 for the 64, and that's the way it seems to be, whether it's qualifying, race pace, whatever. They're always very close together.
This is the #2 in class GT2 car, JMW Motorsport Ferrari 430 GT.
This is the old Virgo crew, and JMW is basically an acronym for the new car owner, Jim McWhirter. He's an Irish guy involved in the insurance business, and really has got together a great team of drivers here, and the Dunlop tires have really come on strong. Risi have a healthy lead right now in class, the defending champs here, but those boys have put together a tremendous run today.
Frank Montagny goes by Antonio Garcia in the Corvette. Give you some idea of the closing speed of the very top-ranked LMP1 prototypes compared to the best of the GT1 production-based category.
Yeah, and that's a 427 Corvette there. They just passed like it wasn't even out there, so you can imagine how fast these diesels really do accelerate. Even though they sound a bit mundane, not turning a lot of revs and not making any noise. That guy's got a heck of a battery in that Porsche.
I was just thinking the same thing. Those hazard lights have been blinking for about 10 hours.
At least 10 hours.
I can't imagine why they haven't taken the opportunity to get that car out of there, but there it sits. Now, don't forget, you have hours remaining in this race to send your questions and comments to us at LeMans24onspeed@gmail.com. We have a question from Dan asking, what are the advantages of diesels, turbo diesels we should point out, over gas-powered, normally aspirated cars? Also, what are the rules involved? Well, Dan, they are many.
And there are many, as a matter of fact. One of the major advantages a diesel has is it gets superior fuel mileage.
Right.
They don't turn as many RPM. These cars only run about 5,500 revs against the 8 or plus thousand or so that the gasoline-powered cars have. So fuel mileage is one of them. Superior torque, or the amount of power output, is substantially greater in a diesel than it is in a normally aspirated type of gasoline engine. These cars, somewhere around 700 horsepower, but 1,100 Newton meters of torque, which far, far surpasses what a gasoline engine is able to do. Rule-wise, there's a bunch of different things because of the fueling itself. The diesel, of course, foams up. If you ever had a diesel and you try to put gas in or put fuel in it, it foams up. So they've got some regulations and some things that they've done to help that situation. So it's a very complex. But I would say for sure, without question, the diesel has a lot of advantages.
And I think the rule had been sitting there for a long time, and certainly other people had looked at it, the potential of a diesel here, and finally the big manufacturers said, you know what, if we go out and build a purpose racing diesel engine, we can potentially do great things. And that's exactly what Audi did back in 2006.
The real challenge for the ACO, the Automobile Club of the West, which runs this race, is to equalize the competitive balance between the diesels and the gas-powered cars. You've heard a lot of discussion up and down the pit lane during our coverage here on Speed. The gas-powered teams still think they're at a competitive disadvantage to the diesels, even in spite of adjustments as recently as April, in which the diesels had 8 weight added to them, substantial amount of weight, 30 kilos.
I tend to agree with him. I mean, when you look at where the first gasoline-powered car on the grid was, it was in 8th place, but it was 5 seconds a lap off the pace set by the lead diesel machine. And although they do reach a good top end, the Aston Martins have a good top end number. It takes them longer to get to that speed than it does the Audi or the Peugeot.
If you'd like to explore the regulations of the cars that run in the 24 Hours of Le Mans, you can find them on the official website for the race, lemans.org, LEMANS.org. We'll take a break. There are your leaders in the Le Mans Prototype LMP1 category. Welcome back to Le Mans. Lots of traffic still on the fabled Le Hunandier, the proper name for the Mulsanne straightaway, as we continue marching toward the checkered flag at the 77th 24 Hours of Le Mans. Here's a program note. Be sure to check out Speed on Thursday night for an all-new episode of Wrecked, as the boys from O'Hare tow a bridge across an icy pond and disaster looms when the ice begins to give way. Don't miss it. An all-new episode of Wrecked, Life in the Crash Lane, Thursday, 10 p.m. Eastern, only on Speed.
Still snowing, Doors.
Yeah, that's not good.
Far from it as the temperature climbs beyond 70 degrees Fahrenheit at Le Mans. Been a beautiful weekend thus far. Right now, let's go down and meet a racing lifer, Dave Beaky Sims, team manager at Risi Competizione. Justin Bell.
Oh, Beaky, I thought that Bob Vash was about to call you a racing legend, but he said you were a racing lifer. That sounds like a prison sentence.
Yeah, he would anyway, but never mind.
So the car's obviously been running a nice solid pace. Jamie's just got in. I mean, you had a pretty modest sort of ambition for your pace during the race, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we know the competition was going to be strong with the other Ferraris, especially the Porsches, but we just kept to our strategy, our plans, our speed, our pit stops, and double stinting tyres, etc., etc. And at the moment, it's working to a treat, working to plan.
You know, during the night, a couple of times I saw you heading up to the Clark of the Course, which probably isn't your first trip up to Clark of the Courses in the world, but in your racing history. What was that all about?
Well, it was to do with the Porsche, which was going extremely fast this morning. and then we found out it had loose restrictors, and we went in and we just said, you know, are you going to do anything about it?
And they didn't.
They didn't, obviously, but you know, it's one of those things you got to go for.
Well, you know, a loose restrictor for a couple of hours would be a nice benefit, guys. Okay.
Nothing worse than a loose restrictor, I always say.
Clerk of the course basically is the steward in charge of race operations, and they can certainly make that call. I mean, if they suddenly see one of these cars doing times that really exceed the normal pace for that class, then they could maybe bring it in and have it checked out. But they didn't like the fact that they really had a rabbit out there that they didn't want to go and chase.
Well, Beeke's in good shape right now, even though there's a long way to go. His car leads the GT2 class by 2 laps over the similar Ferrari, the BMS Scuderia Italia team. And then another Ferrari of the 10 430s entered in the GT2 class this year, the JMW Motorsport example. And then the first of the Porsches, the 76 car from the IMSA Performance team. I suspect that's the one Beeke is thinking about. Long night for that couple.
I tell you what, this is a great stint that Tom Christensen is putting together here. He's got back one of those laps on the number 9 car. We saw him come out of the pit lane and the 9 car take off. TK has got the hammer down. This team realizes they have to now start to try and make up some ground if possible. His last lap was a 3:27.9 to a 3:31.3 for the leader, Genet. But the problem is the meat and the sandwich there. The 8 car just ran a 3:26.2, so that car really has tremendous pace this weekend.
Yeah, that's Montani, and he just didn't run down that 26. So Tom is really trying hard right now. He needs a caution, though, really badly to capitalize on that lap that he's gotten back. He's still 9/10 of a lap down, though, if you would.
The problem with the safety car procedure here is, yes, a yellow would be great, Dorsey, you are right, but you only gain half a lap effectively because there are 2 pace cars out there, so you can't really circulate all the way back around on the tail end of the lead lap, or, you know, the tail end of being 1 lap down. He'd really gain half a lap. And that would really need one of those pace cars to split him and the leader, Genet.
Yeah, we had heard talk about rain in the morning, but it doesn't look to be. Not yet,
I don't
anyway.
think so. We just had that artsy-craftsy shot from our host broadcasters in France. And you saw a nice clear view of the moon as it begins to fade in the morning light here at Le Mans.
For the 50th time, that moon tonight.
That's right. They've been fascinated with that.
They like that moon shot.
So over the years, so many times we've seen when you want your man in the car, Tom Christensen just seems to respond. Alan McNish really seems to be the fastest guy on the Audi squad. If you want to lay down a lap, and Alan's your man, but in terms of winning these races and stepping up to the plate when necessary, TK just has that look in his eye, and he just gets in the car with an intensity and just so consistent, manages traffic beautifully.
This is the kind of thing we've been watching all night from our host broadcast colleagues. They love shots of the moon, of sleeping mechanics.
We've seen this poor boy about 40 times, too.
That's Diffie.
It could be Diffie.
Some of the work that took place during the overnight hours. It has been a long night. On board with Antonio Garcia in the class-leading Corvette.
Good news is we do have control of that.
Yes,
oh, he sees one of the prototypes come slashing by. That's how he got the fender knocked off last time, just about.
That's right.
It's like the other of the Orica cars there. I think that's the number 11 car. Number 10 is still in the garage. As soon as they put this man behind the wheel of this Corvette in testing at Sebring, he just surprised everyone. He was immediately on the pace, and they just said, boy, we know what he can do. Last year, Danny Bink said last year, he beat us, so if you can't beat him, get him.
He's not getting exactly outlegged by that. That's one of the Peugeots up there ahead, I think. He's not exactly storming off and leaving him. He's got him a little bit on quarter speed for sure, but
what a remarkable 12 months this man has had. One here 12 months ago with the Aston Martin squad in the 009, along with Brabs and Turner. Came out the box strong this year at the Daytona 24-hour race, winning with the Brumos team. And then on his debut with the Corvette squad, won the 12 Hours of Sebring and leads right now.
I think it's a testament, too, to how good that race car is. It's so well developed. I think you could pop right in there and be pretty comfortable right away.
That would make Antonio Garcia probably the most successful Spanish racing driver in the last year, including Fernando Alonso in Formula One.
Last lap, Christensen at 3:27.1, the lead at 3:30.8. So he's pulling like 3 to 5 seconds a lap off that lead car, which is good.
Yep. Meanwhile, here's the 4th place car, both in overall and the LMP1 category. Stefan Muke in the Lola Aston Martin.
Beautiful car. And one thing it does do, it's got a lot of top end. It gets to a big mile per hour, but I suspect it takes it a long time to get to that mile per hour, unlike the Peugeot and Audi, who get to their top speed, even though it's lower, they get there quicker.
And that sound is awesome.
Yeah, it sounds like a race car. It's supposed to sound.
That's right.
Standing there this week when the cars rolled out for the first practice session, and we've kind of got used to the non-sound of the diesel, and that thing whistled by, and I was like, yeah, that's what it's all about.
I'll bet it was a huge star in those iconic Gulf colors when they rolled it off the truck for scrutineering as well.
And that scrutineering procedure is something else that happens over the course of 2 days. Each of the team has an appointment there down in the center of town. And there is just a mass of people, and it takes about 2 hours for the team to go through the whole procedure and the photo ops, and there's an interview process on the stage with all of the drivers in their overalls, all their team gear. It's pretty spectacular stuff, and it really just starts off the week in the right way.
You definitely have to have the 24 Hours of Le Mans on your racing to-do list, and when you come, make sure you come at the beginning of the race week in order to take in scrutineering on the Place Saint-Jacobin in downtown Le Mans. Here's a look at your P2 leaders going to break. Maybe not. Welcome back live to Le Mans, 77th running here on Speed. I'm Bob Varsha with Dorsey Schrader and Calvin Fish. Chris Neville and Justin Bell down in the pit lane. We're taking you all the way to the checkered flag and beyond here at Les South. The race leader is Marc Gené, 251 laps complete in the Peugeot. He has a 1-lap lead over his teammate Frank Montagny. Tom Christensen, 2 laps behind the race leader and going very, very quickly. But fastest of all, Nick Manassian, just a short while ago, turned a lap at 3:24.512.
It's just a couple seconds off the pole time, so I mean they're really getting with it right now.
Now we've talked about this amazing racetrack over and over again, perhaps the last true road course in all of motorsports. So to take you around, let's take a little clip from the wonderful racing movie Truth in 24 about the Audi team at Le Mans. It aired on Speed last night. We hope you enjoyed it. Right now, let's join Alan McNish for a startling driver's eye view of what it's like to lap at Le Mans.
Now here you are in the pit lane. This is what the driver's eye view. It's incredibly low and close to the ground. You see, now you release the speed lane limiter. You're accelerating out of the pit lane up into 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th gear, using the curb on the right-hand side on a racing line, down into 2nd gear for the Dunlop S. Now this is a very tricky corner because, as you can see, it's uphill and also the camber of the road falls away from you. 3rd gear, underneath the bridge, and then down into the actual S's themselves. 4th and then 5th gear. Braking hard here. The car always wants to keep turning right, but you need to make it turn left. You need to get in there. The car understeers. You brake 4th gear and then accelerating towards Tetra Rouge. Very, very critical corner. Very, very fast entry now. And you've got to make sure that 140 mile an hour, 145 mile an hour exit is critical for your straight line speed at the end of the straight. Now you're on the first part of the Mulsanne. Now you've taken top gear. Now you can relax. Now you can look at the steering wheel. Make sure all of the data is correct. Make sure there's no alarms. Speak to your engineer if you have to. Get some response before steeling yourself, before coming up to the braking point point for this first chicane. Braking hard just after the 200-metre board, down into third gear. Now, you've been doing 220 miles per hour. You come into this corner, and you're actually only doing about 100 in the mid-corner. You accelerate hard, again trying to get the maximum exit. Let the car run free, fourth and then fifth gear, coming down towards the second chicane. Another point, just to be very careful. Crossing the crown of the road, you have to do it at a certain point, otherwise the car grounds out. If you do that for 24 hours, you'll damage the bottom of it. Here the braking point is tricky in the night because it's just in between two zones. Down into third, the car always understeers here. You never get the front in, you never feel comfortable, but you have to do it precisely and correctly every time. Now we're coming up to the hump. Now this used to be a big jump over where the car would go like, now it's a little bit easier on you. Into the Mulsanne corner. Very difficult corner because suddenly you lose all feeling of efficiency. You're coming from 200 miles an hour down into about 55, 60 miles per hour, and you don't have the sensation of the grip underneath you. Before you accelerate out third, fourth, fifth gear, going through the small kinks down towards Indianapolis. One of my favourite sections on the whole circuit. That is what you see at night. That sun coming into your eyes, going from the contrast of not being able to see into the darkness of the trees. Down into third gear for this left-hander. Now you've came through the previous one at 170 miles per hour. You're trying to stop the car into the left, and then suddenly you come to Arnage. One of the hardest corners on this track because it is so slow, because your brain is going so fast all the other points, and then suddenly you've got to go at 50 miles per hour. Suddenly you've got to be delicate and get a clean exit before accelerating down towards the Porsche curves. Now these are real men's corners. They're very, very fast. In at 200 miles per hour, down a gear, quickly in towards the apex on the right-hand side, flat out on fourth gear, up into fifth. Now we're doing about 180 miles per hour. The road looks very narrow. The Armco barrier is very close. Keeping in towards that right-hand white line. Don't touch the grass, you'll be off. Into fifth gear, through the chicane. Now you've only got two corners to go, the Ford chicane. And this is a very difficult one. You can gain everything or you can lose everything just by braking too late here. Down to third gear, run the curb on the left, run the curb on the right. Try to keep over to the right to get a good clean exit out of the last one. Hit the curb on the left, hit the curb on the right. Wide open throttle in third gear. Fourth, fifth, over the line. That's 3 minutes 23 and over 8.5 miles done.
Well, class dismissed.
Well, I see an alternator in the mechanic's hand there, so I know what's going on in this particular case. There's the belt laying on the doorway, and the mechanic holding a new alternator, which is about to be put in there.
Speedy Team Sabah. You know you're dealing with a veteran racing driver at Le Mans when he says you get it up to 220 miles an hour and then you can relax. Great guy, Alan McNish. And a good broadcaster, too. He's worked for us here at Speed at Le Mans before when he wasn't busy out there trying to win the race. Now let's go down to Chris Neville, who's standing by with the strategist for the Flying Lizard team to find out about that incident I talked about just after we came on the air. Thomas Blom is with Chris.
Thanks, Bob. Thomas, it's been a while since we've seen the Flying Lizard car, and you guys are all packing up, so what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, we had a great start to the race. Jörg did a fantastic job, led early on, fell back a little bit, and then we got back into the lead. Had a couple issues through the night, got hit by a back marker, lost a couple of laps there. Still got back to within half a lap of second place. You know, the podium was looking good. Things went our way, and then a little unclear. Came out of the pits, late caution. There was some, from what we understand, there's still possibly a lot of oil dry down in one of the chicanes, and Darren went off in that chicane. He's okay. He's a little banged up. We haven't had a chance to talk to him, but talking to some of the other drivers, we believe that may have what did happen to us. So. Car's pretty heavily damaged, so put us out. You know, another disappointing Le Mans for us. You know, it's not an easy place. We love coming here, and obviously we're hoping to come back next year, and we'll see what happens then. But it's obviously very disappointing. The crew did an unbelievable job. Just fantastic pit stops, fantastic driving, but it's the way it goes sometimes.
Well, we're sorry to hear that, and we're glad Darren's okay, and we'll see you back in the States.
Thank you very much.
That'll be a big disappointment for Darren Law, who was absolutely crackling with excitement at being at Le Mans for the first time in his career.
Yeah, Darren's a pretty honest guy, and I'm sure if he made a mistake there, that will really tear him up, because he was so looking forward to this race. And we talk about it, Dorsey, it's a team effort. And if you do make a mistake, it's not just you, it's the whole effort, the other co-drivers and the whole team. It's such a tremendous program to be here at Le Mans, and the effort that it takes is incredible.
And now we're back to that belt, which is there's the alternator in the mechanic's hand as they're trying to get the other one off. Still attached to the engine. So these alternators go through quite a bit because of the electronics on this car and the fact that you're in endurance mode. You're running all sorts of headlights and taillights and things. You need more than 12 volts. The batteries are 12 volts and the system's 12 volts, but you really need about 13.5 volts to keep even with all the power drain coming out.
Big draw.
And as a result, you see this failure quite often with the alternator.
There's a good look down on the pit area and the ACO property. This is on the ACO property, which includes the short Bugatti course, which hosts lots of other forms of motorsport throughout the year. And watch as they come down the hill. There's the Bugatti course turning right. Here comes the edge of the property. And you get down into Tertre Rouge and rejoin the public roads right here.
Gives you a good sense of speed when you look from above, doesn't it?
That is a really quick corner, Tertre Rouge.
They're building some stadia.
About 150 miles an hour on the entry there. Incredible.
This is the first time we've gone on board the helicopter to give you a real feel for the speed, even with the 2 chicanes installed on the Mulsanne straightaway. These cars still get up to a pretty good clip. What was the top speed we've heard? About 211 miles an hour, Calvin?
That's right.
Awesome stuff. There's a look at the LMP1 class leaders battling for the overall victory at Le Mans. We'll be back in just a moment, coming up on 8 hours to go. Welcome back live to Le Mans. Looking down from above the Circuit de la Sarthe. The car on the left side of your screen is race leader Marc Gené, who has just made a pit stop and emerged. Excuse me, changeover. David Brabham now at the keyboard as they remain in the race lead. But the sister car, the number 8, in the hands of Frank Montagny, if he does not pit, will have closed up. Still showing a lap down, and a further lap down, Tom Christensen, who we saw pass the race leader when Marc Gené was still at the control. So
yeah, I think Christensen, once this recycles, I think Christensen will just be 1 lap down.
Yeah,
plus
he'll make up a chunk.
Yeah. Until he crosses the stripe, it'll still show on the scoring as 2.
We're at the top of the hour. 7 o'clock in the morning at Le Mans. With Dorsey Schrader, Calvin Fish, Chris Neville. I'm Bob Varsha. Let's go down to Chris right now, standing by with Le Mans veteran Sascha Maassen.
Well, Bob, typically LMP2 is kind of the last man standing, but this year we've seen a really good battle between the 31 car and the 5 car. But Sascha, you're a couple laps down right now, mainly because of splitter damage. What kind of state is the 5 car in?
I guess the car is now fine again. We had twice a problem with the front splitter. Once I was in the car, so I was sure I hit a curb a little too hard. And the splitter came up, so we had to change it. And the second time, I'm not sure. My teammate had a problem. But now the car is fine, but we are down 3 laps. So we have to wait and see and keep pushing and hope that the others make a mistake.
You've done this race 7 times. You've won it twice. We've still got a third of the race to go. How hard is it to keep digging here in the last 8 hours?
Actually, as a driver, you want to keep your rhythm. And the rhythm is driving quick, so it's not a big problem. Just, you know, waiting until something happens. So the race finishes is a little bit annoying. But, of course, we would like to we would prefer to battle with them, but we have to wait.
You've had so much success in the U.S. Any chance we're going to see you there later this year?
Yeah, there's a chance.
Good luck later on, bud.
Well, Sascha has more laps in the RS Spider than anyone. He and Lucas Luhr developed that car. Remember back in 2005 when we first saw it debut, and won the championship in 2006. And he said the car is similar to what I started with, but obviously the Le Mans spec, the aero is a lot different to what we ran in the States.
You could also hear the discipline in the fact that he said we have to wait for something to happen. They can't push the car to a 3-lap. They can't unlap themselves. They absolutely need something to happen to the other guys.
It's got to be incredibly frustrating for a racing driver. Traffic action going on right now. Let's take time for a Valvoline race recap featuring some of the more spectacular incidents. Alex Premat, opening laps of the race, blotting his copybook, as the saying goes. How about Stefan Ortelli, former overall winner of this race? Just that little bit of left side wheels off, and that was the result. Taking off the rear wing, the first of many incidents involving the number 10 car. Stuart Hall tried this Alphonse and Gaston act with the LMP2 class car of Tim Greaves and was ejected from the event by the stewards for his trouble. Really was a fairly egregious bit of bad driving. Lucas Luhr, listen to this. Still, nobody can quite explain what happened to Luhr, who thinks he made a mistake, but nobody seems to be quite sure. At any rate, that was the result, and that Audi was done. Contact here for Johnny O'Connell with one of the LMP2, one of the year-old cars. And this was the accident for Benoit Trillier in the Pescarolo Peugeot. A very, very frightening moment. You see the damage to the car. Once again, Trillier is in the hospital, and apparently he will be just fine. Now, despite the 2 long safety car periods that I mentioned earlier, you can see we are just 7 laps behind the pace to the 15-hour mark a year ago. So you can imagine the pace the early part of this race went down, and if the weather stays good and the pace remains torrid, we could see a pretty significant laps completed number at the end of the race. In replay, watching the 007 Aston Martin Lola having a little trouble dealing with one of the Audis. Let's go down to Justin Bell.
Marc Gené, you just got out of the car in the lead. You look pretty fatigué at this time of the morning. Obviously, it's a tough pace you guys are running.
Yeah, because the Audi is not so far behind, so you cannot quite relax, you know. But so far so good.
Tell me, as the temperature starts to rise, as the light comes up, do you find the characteristic of your car changes a little, especially with the windscreen, trying to look through with the sun coming up? It's difficult.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem. The Audi guys have, like for example, I had the visor for the night, and with the sun it was extremely difficult. And my last in was very difficult because of the light. You know, with a dark visor would have been much better, but I had a clear one because I started the stint at 4 in the morning.
We got one question. We have an Australian on our broadcast team. What's it like driving an Australian? He's behaving okay?
Yeah, he's doing very well. He's very experienced, and I just met him this year, and he's a very nice person and very fast. And if we win, still long time to go, you know. But if we do, it's thanks to him especially.
Fantastic. We're on your side. Good luck. And of course, I did teach David everything he knows, guys. Tongue in cheek.
And he hasn't wrecked yet. Remarkable. 7 hours, 53 minutes, and 42 seconds. Mark, to be precise, remaining in the 77th running here at Le Mans.
Almost a normal work day.
Right.
Left to go.
Time to get down to it. Bright morning sun here.
I believe this is a battle for position we were then seeing for second place in the GT2 category. The BMS Scuderia Italia Ferrari was running second, and right on their heels is the JMW Motorsports Ferrari, currently driven by Rob Bell, who's a 2-time LMS champion in GT2, one of the real stars over in Europe in this form of racing. And there's the leader, the 82.
Big contrast in driving style from where we started this race a long time back, when they were slamming all those curbs, all those cars jumping, getting air. They've all settled that down. Race cars are tired right now. Not only the drivers and the crews are tired, but the race cars are tired, and they don't need any abuse at this point. Slamming them off the curbs and so forth is not what they like.
One of the Collis cars here, Dorsey, Andre Lauderer, he had 0 mileage in this car prior to race week here. A late draft for the Collis team. 6 rookies at Le Mans in the 2 cars, but he is a very impressive young man. Saw him in a champ car race down in Mexico City. And I watched as Bobby Rahal came up and shook his hand, and I didn't know much about this man, and Bobby turned to me and said, this guy is really quick. We tested him in the Formula 1 Jag team when Bobby was over in Europe running that operation, and he said he was really impressive.
Currently shown 9th overall and in LMP1. one of the R10 turbo diesel Audis.
The two cars, one is last year's LMS Champ car that Rocky and Prema ran, and the other one supposedly is the 06 car that Pirro and Biela ran. I'm not sure which one between the 14 and the 15 in terms of how they got split up, but they're the two cars that were purchased by Collis from the Audi team.
And the R10 a little bit more difficult to drive than the new R15. It's first attempt by Audi with that diesel power at the back, and admittedly had a little bit of a high roll center at the back end and a little bit rear weight. So you had to watch that car in brake zones.
And that rear wing is essentially a copy of the R15. There's a restriction in the rear wing size from 2 meters down to 1.6. And that's a big change there, and they basically made that change to help balance out this car and make it adhere to the new regulations also.
Right about now, the fans will be shaking the sleep out of their eyes, heading for the grandstands in the Carnival area, getting ready for the finish at Le Mans. We'll be back.
Here is that battle once again, and that Porsche obviously blundered the attack by the Mercedes, but it has gone again.
My God, there it is. It's into the trees.
Right. Unbelievable. That is what we have seen twice already this weekend, and that one went off track.
That is just devastating. They, of course, will have to withdraw instantly the other car. There's no question of doing it now. We have just seen one of the most dramatic moments that you will ever see. It's the second time in history that a Mercedes has actually left the track here. The other time back in 1955 with disastrous results. The other two times here in the last few days, the car actually stayed within the bounds of the track. But this one is off in the woods.
Here's the replay, and again,
Mercedes right behind the Toyota, just in that dead air area. And
look at that. That's exactly the terror of it. Thank fortune it did not hit the bridge, but you can see how high up it got. It looks like it may have landed on its wheels. This could have a happy ending yet, but of course it's much too early to say. Now, Mercedes is linked with Le Mans, partly through tragedy, partly through grand achievement. But this is a moment that will certainly not be quickly forgotten.
That was 1999 as we come back to live pictures from Le Mans. Peter Dumbreck of Great Britain taking that horrifying flight in a Mercedes CLR. His teammate Mark Webber of Australia, now currently a Formula One Red Bull Renault driver, had two similar flips earlier that weekend. Sam Posey, David Hobbs, and Greg Kramer on the race call, and they were right. Those cars were withdrawn immediately after those absolutely terrifying flights. 1999, by the way, the last time a non-Audi powered car, if not an Audi factory car outright, won here at Le Mans. That's how powerful Audi has been. Justin Bell.
It's funny, that brought back some memories, Bob, because I was in that race racing for the Oreca Viper team. Obviously, there was a big force here with Hugh de Schoenack, and we were in the driver's briefing, and then we went down for the photographs, and my teammate Mark Duez, all the drivers line up, and there was 3 drivers that were very, very quiet, and they were the drivers of the next Mercedes that were going to be the only Mercedes that was going to be running, which ended up being the Dumbreck car. And Mark stood there with a piece of paper. We all had pieces of paper, and we went for takeoff 0 points, for landing 10 points, and everyone else and all the drivers laughed, apart from the 6 Mercedes drivers who were distinctly unamused by it. And definitely Webber had been a little bit misled. They said after the first flip, which most drivers never experienced in their whole career, they said, you know, this will never ever happen again to you, Peter. You can get, you know, Mark, you can get into the car 100% safe. And of course, the next day he did it again. It was staggering to behold, and obviously some mild aero problems there. But I remember being on the ground that race.
It wasn't long after that that hump was lowered on the backstretch, which you heard Alan McNish talking about earlier in his description of a lap here at Le Mans. Now there's the 76 IMSA Performance Porsche.
Down in 4th spot right now. They've certainly been one of the fastest cars in this class throughout the course of this event, but visited garage area a little too often to really be a factor. Patrick Pilet was forced off the racetrack by Sebastien Bourdais earlier in the race. And had an interesting conversation with Pat Long this weekend, and he talked about the fact that it's really an all-French squad other than him. French drivers, 2 French co-drivers, and completely a French team. And he talked about the language barrier, and fortunately, Pat is a multilingual. He speaks in 5 different languages, but he talked about how things can get so confusing. He remembers standing in the garage with the radio on, and one of the drivers in the car, and all they could hear over the radio was cut, cut, cut. And what Pat was reading into is that the engine was cutting, meaning that he's on reserve and going to be coming in. And the mechanics are all laughing at each other. So he goes over and says, "What's wrong?" And they say, "Oh, he sees a cat on the track." And he says, "No, that's not cat, that's cut. He's coming in, mate."
And he's out of gas.
Yeah.
You also saw a replay of the 97 BMS Scuderia Italia Ferrari off the track. That's Matthew Malicelli. That is the 3rd place car in class as you watch the GT1 class leading Corvette making a pit stop and a driver change.
Johnny O'Connell getting into the car as he's strapped in, and he'll be out of here in a moment.
Chris Neville is there.
Hey guys, I was just talking with Johnny O about the lead they had. He said, you know, at this point in time in the race, all you got to do is just keep going out there, keep hitting your marks, not making any mistakes. Try and stay as focused as possible. Don't do any damage to the car. They've got this lead a little bit, well, pretty close to 2 minutes on the 64 car, and this has pretty much happened because of the first caution in the race. Split these 2 cars up with different pace cars on the racetrack, and because these teams, these crews, these drivers are so evenly matched between the 64 and the 63, the 64 just hasn't been able to make up any time. So Johnny O said, all we need to do right now is just keep hitting our marks.
You know, 1 flat tire and that 2 minutes goes away in a heartbeat, depending on where you got it at this place. 8.5 miles. You catch it at the wrong time. We saw what happened yesterday with the Peugeot when it got clipped in pit lane, and how long 8.5 laps can be. I mean, 8.5 miles. Sorry, 1 lap.
Tell you, last year, that's really what happened between the Aston Martins and the Corvette. They got split on one of these pace cars, and really gave the Aston Martin squad the buffer that they needed. And eventually O'Connell and the 63 car finished 2nd in a very similar scenario, and the Astons just had the perfect run. Car never really spent any time in the pit lane to speak of, and that was the difference.
There's the number 8 Peugeot. Frank Montagny aboard. He's been in that car for some time. This may be a triple stint for the Frenchman.
Shows the awesome speed that Peugeot has. Well, he just come barreling by all these cars like they're not even out there. The car handles well, and it's got big top end.
We heard that Montagny is driving with a stress fracture in a leg here this weekend, so he's certainly putting in great work and has really shown himself to be the fastest man on the Peugeot squad in race trim anyway. Sarrazin had the qualifying honors, and but right now Montagny is just really laying down some great laps as he did from the get-go here yesterday afternoon.
It was to be his left leg that was reported to have sustained a stress fracture, so at least it's not the foot that is flat on the floor on the accelerator. And that has to be a help. That is not a good place to be, little birdie.
The 33 car back in the garage area had the alternator problem, Dorsey, and this is a shame. These guys are having a good run here this weekend. 3rd currently in class, but too much time in the garage is going to cost them.
If there was a toll for every time that went into the garage, they'd be out of money by now. Let's go down to Chris Neville with Antonio Garcia, who's just gotten out of the GT1 class leading Corvette. Chris?
Yeah, and he looks like he wasn't even driving that hard out of there. Hey, Tony, you've had an incredible 12 months. You won them all last year with Aston Martin. Then you won the Rolex 24 with Brumos. Then Sebring, the 12 hours with Corvette. You've got to start feeling like some of these teams are thinking you're a lucky rabbit's foot.
Maybe. I don't know. I just doing my job, I think. I enjoy him, which is the more important thing. Now we get to the morning and still we are there really close to the other car, and that's it. I'm really enjoying that race with Chevy team.
Pretty exciting 12 months for you. I mean, is this pretty much the best year of your career?
Yeah, probably. I could not expect anything else. I mean, everything I've done of these kind of races, I went to the top spot. So I hope this career keeps going that way, and this is not a question of fortune.
Well, he's always pretty soft-spoken, but anybody who he's driven for this year has just said, God, he is so fast behind the wheel. Look out.
And he is an interesting story. Antonio Garcia basically turned his back on European racing, which is where all of the top, at least open wheel teams, look for their young drivers. The crucible of competition over there is considered to be so much more tough than it is in the United States. But Garcia said, no, I'm going to America. And it's all worked out for him. And congratulations to him. Maybe he'll help disprove the myth of European superiority. They're your class leaders in all 4 classes at Le Mans. Welcome back live to Le Mans. Bob Varsha, Dorsey Schrader, Calvin Fish, Chris Neville, and Justin Bell with you as once again they button up the number 33 after yet another adjustment, maybe another alternator. We haven't been posted in the garage long enough to know exactly what they did, but this team has really earned their money, and it cranks. As the battle continues on track, you've got a personal invitation from Daytona International Speedway to enter the 2009 Rolex Sports Car Series VIP Sweepstakes. Enter to win a VIP package during the Brumos 250 this summer. Let's check the list. A couple of laps in Daytona prototype, check. Access to the garages, check. No purchase necessary. Visit speedtv.com, keyword promo, P-R-O-M-O, for more information.
Couple of laps around old High Bank Daytona will get your attention. Oh, never been there before.
I was driven around there by Derek Bell in a street Porsche, and it was pretty entertaining. I can't imagine what those DPs are like.
Dr. Ulrich taking a little bit of a snooze, I would say.
Doctor's orders. Sleep.
And there he stirs a little bit. Look up at that scoreboard and
looks out the corner of his eye, sees the television camera, says, how long have you been looking at me?
He was just reliving Lucas Luhr's moment.
Yeah, the nightmare is real.
Well, after so many years of success, the dominators for a decade, it looks like Audi is in some peril here right now. Tom Christensen, who better to be in the #1 Audi right now? But he has still shown, well, nearly 2 full laps down to the race-leading Peugeot in the hands of David Brabham.
There's Chris Dyson, currently running 4th in the number 25 RML car in the P2 category. Car is so similar to what he runs here on a regular basis with the Dyson squad, having switched over to that Mazda-powered machine this year. 2-car assault on the American Le Mans Series Championship.
He's about to have company from Arrears.
One of the Collis R10s coming up behind him. Look at the speed differential here between a P2 and a diesel-powered P1 machine down the straightaway.
I think that's the GT1 class. Aston Martin up ahead, slash. Across comes the Audi.
I'm sorry, Dos.
I was about to say, I kind of wonder how much they have to turn down the Mazda engine, the power on that, compared to what they run when they run it in the States. Because it's been running an awfully long time.
It has. 4 Mazda-powered machines in the LMP2 category, and they've had some teething problems with them motor in the first couple of rounds of the LMS Championship, but really believe they've turned the corner, and this is really a great sign. The difference in the P2 to the P1 cars, in qualifying at least, was about 20 miles an hour. 211.9 for the Peugeot was the top speed that we've seen this weekend, and 191 for the number 5 machine in qualifying, the leading P2 speed.
That Mazda, of course, a turbocharged 4-valve 4-cylinder.
Just love the way that Mazda go racing. They really start out at the grassroots level and all the way up to this, their top sports car racing category. But John Doonan, Robert Davis over here in the States just do a tremendous job on what are relatively limited resources, but really spread it throughout a number of different areas. They have a great ladder system going on throughout both the single-seater and the tin tops and sports car ranks.
And I hope they can keep that program up despite the downturn in the economy, because it will pay off eventually.
Well, Mazda certainly has done more for young racers in this country, United States anyway, than probably anybody recently. I mean, with all their ladder system that you're talking about, Calvin, there's more Mazdas being raced than there is probably any other mark out there, and you'd hate to see that go away.
Looks like a few of the fans haven't got their wake-up calls yet.
Yeah, I believe
they had a rough night.
I believe Mazda have really been the lifeline to single-seater racing here for the past couple of years, because obviously with the economy the way it's been and people cutting back on budgets, but they've hung in there. They've had to cut some corners, but boy, it's really been a great training ground for so many young drivers and continuing to do their job.
What we didn't show is just outside where those people are sleeping is where the Cronenberg stand is. Out on
and a great big pile of empty cans.
Yes, a great big pile of empty cans.
That's another look down. You see the golf course on the left. I believe that is where the late Steve McQueen set up his movie camp when they made that wonderful movie Le Mans, based on footage shot during the 1970 race. In 1971, Steve McQueen was here as the honorary starter for the 24 Hours of Le Mans.
For the campers here this year, they stayed dry for the most part. There's thousands and thousands of campers here. That's one of the neat things. This is like going back to the United States, years and years ago in the early 70s, where everybody used to have tents and camp out and so forth, not have the big high-dollar motor coaches and things that you see nowadays.
Yep.
This is very much a tent city when you come to Le Mans.
Well, at Le Mans, this crowd of some 250,000 estimated, you can do it any way you want. You can sleep out in the field, or you can visit some calendar-perfect auberges not far away from this incredible racetrack.
Well, I find funny there's a huge British contingent who typically drive over a course, and you'll see like Bentleys and Ferraris, and they're parked in the campsite, and these guys are sleeping in these little itty-bitty tents. It's a strange irony there. Patrick Dempsey getting ready for another stint, it looks like. Joe Foster hopping out. Boys are doing a great job keeping this car rolling, staying out of trouble.
Absolutely doing a great job.
Let's go down to Justin Bell in their pit.
Actually, Don Kitch got out. You can't mistake that 6'4" frame or something. He just had a really nice run in the car. Patrick, I just saw outside before he put on his helmet, and I said, "Did you sleep?" And he was like, "No, how could I sleep? I'm way too excited." So the same enthusiasm that we saw from the beginning, certainly carrying its way through the night. You can understand it, can't you? He's driving a beautiful 430 Ferrari, representing a charity he believes in, a track that he's dreamt of coming to, and of course driving with Joe Foster, who he's got a great relationship with, and certainly is helping guide his burgeoning and youthful racing career alongside his TV career. But he's really taken it seriously, and they have a goal for the race, and that is just not to mess up and of course finish, which as you can see from so many people dropping out, is not just a question of driver error. It can also just be mechanical failure, or Le Mans will just take a bite out of you. I really hope these guys finished. It's a great effort, a great charity. TeamSeattle.com, go there and support them, pledge your money. A lot of people are gaining from this every lap they make, so we're all keeping our eyes on this.
It's the right outlook, isn't it? I mean, just to go in with the goal of just finishing. Nothing more, just finish.
Getting experience, that's what it's all about, and they're currently running in 10th spot, which is really a great testimony to the consistent run they're having. Mike Gué is leading the charge over there. Got involved earlier this year, visited Italy, tied up the deal with AF Corsa to supply the car and the crew. Boys went over and tested in Italy, both Joe and Patrick, and then Patrick came here and got the run on the Bugatti circuit, which really doesn't give you much time, but certainly gives you a feel for this place, and he came back just eyes blazing about the experience, and so look forward to this event. We saw him race at Watkins Glen last weekend. I got off the plane in Paris on Monday, and he was there at the baggage claim, and the photographers were already clicking. It's pretty wild. I mean, the exposure that he's gotten here this weekend and the coverage.
Don't know if they're working on electrical or what, but there's two mechanics on the passenger side, and they're busy. It probably is electrical there on the floor.
Got a tie wrap in his hand, fastening something down. Is that the drinks bottle over there? Or?
Well, I saw Patrick come in with his own drink bottle, but I don't think that's what they're tying down. I think they're actually working on something that's come loose in there.
Well, as we mentioned, they'll continue to rack up laps and donations. Lots of work going on at the same intensity up and down the pit lane. There are your GT2 class leaders. We'll be back with more live from Le Mans. Welcome back live to Le Mans. Call it breakfast at Le Mans if you like an early breakfast. Saw the number 12 Courage Oreca Judd sitting in the garage. That's been a familiar scene.
That's not a familiar scene. One of the Astons with a bunch of smoke emitting out of the, I think that's the tailpipe. I think we might have just lost the old Aston.
I think that was the end of a 12-cylinder Songbird. There's the number 7 Peugeot in the hands of Nick Manassian. He's been very, very quick in recent laps. Currently shown in 10th place in both the overall and the class. Is this the afflicted and aforementioned?
Well, it's got 12 cylinders. It should be able to do without a couple of them. Probably
They're very
not.
little.
They are very little. Unfortunately, we watched that smoke for about a half a lap before it really got bad.
As the Aston Martin crew falls on the car. Let's hear from Don Kitch Jr., who's just gotten out of the Ferrari. He shares with Joe Foster and Patrick Dempsey. Here's Justin Bell.
Don, I know that you're not feeling too well with your chest cold, but apart from your little physical misery, are you having a good time out there?
You know what? We're in Le Mans in a Ferrari. For guys like us, it doesn't get much better than this. We're learning, and we are so honored to be here representing our city and pediatric healthcare worldwide. And yeah, we're having a ball.
And as you see your teammates get in the car, there's that sort of handing over of the baton, isn't it? Listen, I looked after it for an hour. You've got to do the same.
Well, you know, you've been here, and the bonding that goes on between co-drivers is very special. And yeah, we're on a mission here to learn and to bring back as much as we can. Right now, we're so excited about the fact that that number right there, that 670 number, has now gone to $707. Every time that car goes by start finish, $707 goes to our Seattle Children's Hospital, the Miracle House. And before we go any further, I want to thank Speed for all you've done over 13 years and all of our sponsors and supporters back in Seattle that got this car here. Thank you so much.
As I said when I introduced you earlier, you're a giver, not a taker. We love it, Don. Thanks very much.
Yeah, congratulations to Don and his crew. Their car now 10th in class. May pick up a few more positions before this one is over, and of course pick up a few $1,000s more for their charitable effort. On board with Nick Manassian and the number 7 Peugeot. Shown with 252 laps on the books. That's 13 laps down to the race leading example, still in the hands of David Brabham, although he is shown in the pit right now.
They had a handful coming out of Arnage here, didn't he? I mean, lit it up pretty good.
Well, sometimes you need a little wake me up.
Yeah, he's feeling spry this morning.
There is Brabham's car, the number 9. Don't know if we've had a driver change there. I don't see David Brabham in the background. Sharing with Marc Genet, test driver for the Ferrari Formula One team, and Alex Wurz, who recently was denied the opportunity to start a Formula One team. So look down on the start-finish straightaway. There's the clubhouse of the ACO on the left. And if the camera pulls out, you'll see a shopping area on the bluff just behind the clubhouse where you can buy all manner of wonderful things, some of which won't hurt you. There's David in the cockpit.
Well, now we know there's no driver change. It's definitely David.
Meanwhile, the Aston Martin crew works on that smoking example of the 12-cylinder Aston Martin lowlight. There's a good example of the speed differential between a Type A LMP1 class car and a very, very good GT1 class car.
Manassian looks to be trying really hard. He's got the fastest race lap. I mean, he's hammering those corners now.
He is 2 laps, make that 1 lap down to the next car in line, the 9th place car of Jos Verstappen. And that was Verstappen sitting in the Aston Martin garage. If he is not done, the Dutchman is at least delayed. Manassian no doubt knows that, which may be why he's turned up the wick a little bit.
Yeah, you can see he's trying quite hard right now. Just watch him attack these corners.
Let's get an update on the Audi situation. Chris Neville is with Brad Kettler.
Well, Brad's trying to enjoy some breakfast down here along the pit lane. 3 car was just in, pushed it back into the garage again. It looked like you were blowing out radiators and intercoolers. That car's still getting a little too hot.
Yeah, we're fighting intake temperatures, but more than anything, we're trying to figure out the most efficient way to keep those temperatures down so we can share it with the other car. That's been really the exercise of that car. After we had our big problem earlier, we got set way back. The car still has plenty of speed. It's running good. The guys are driving it well, but we're using it as kind of a test bed to kind of hone some procedures down in case we need them later in the day for the other car.
Any idea why we're seeing these high temperatures on the Audis?
Well, I think everybody's seeing some pretty high temperatures. There seems to be a lot more fine dirt and a lot more fine sand here than we've seen before, and it's hard to get out of the coolers, and it's pushing the charge temperature up. And we're just trying to make sure that we keep the #1 car on the safe side so they can keep pushing and keep fighting.
That fine sand, do you think that's because we didn't have the pre-test and we had a lack of a lot of dry track running this week?
It could be. Some of the aggregates they use around here are a little strange, with the sharp stones and the gravel beds and stuff like that. But it's just a lot more than I've seen before, and even after the cleaning, you don't get a lot out. So
I think Brad's got to get back to work here, so we're going to let him still work on that, and hopefully they can come up with some type of strategy to deal with the 1 car if it's still in the fight later in the day here, and also still dealing with some of these overheating issues.
Thanks to Brad Kettler. Hope he enjoys the croissant. He talked about charge temperature, Dorsey. That goes back to what you said very, very early in this 24-hour race about what happens when these diesel cars get hot. They can be very tough to restart when they're not running.
Yeah, it's not just water temperature and oil temperature that you have to worry about with these turbocharged intercooled diesel power. The intercooler itself is a radiator of sorts that cools the intake charge temp. Of course, turbochargers create a tremendous amount of heat. That heat has to be cooled before it's shoved back down through the cylinders. And they're having trouble with that intercooler as far as getting it cleaned out. It's getting clogged up. They see the temperature, the intake temperature go up higher and the efficiency go down considerably.
Affects the combustion. Meanwhile, Nick Manassian continues to pound away.
We haven't seen it so much on the Peugeots, or have we? I mean, we've seen their trick little filter screen that they can pull out from in front of the radiator. So they had the same problem last year. Audi never had the problem last year. Now they're experiencing it, and Peugeot's already rectified it.
So Jos Verstappen looking up at the timing screens, no doubt, knowing that Nick Manassian is closing fast for 9th place.
Well, they've had a very fraught trip, this #7 car. Starting off with that crash in the pits when the Pescarolo 908 ran into it when it was leaving, and of course they had that terrible issue with the tyre going down. Immediately left the pit lane and had to do 8.5 miles of that tail tyre thrashing around, and he lost nearly 7 laps right there.
Did I mention?
They had another 15-minute stop in the middle of the night. They just keep on picking it up, then losing it again.
This just in from the Department of Redundancy. David Hobbs has rejoined us here in the announce booth. We'll be back with more Breakfast at Le Mans. Stay with us. We are back live at Le Mans. Bob Varsha with Dorsey Schrader, David Hobbs, Justin Bell, and Chris Neville. Glad to have you with us. Work continues in the Aston Martin garage on the 008 machine, which has now fallen to 10th place as it sits in the garage while the #7 Peugeot of Nick Manassian flies by to take a 1-lap lead over the 008 for the 9th spot.
Well, we thought that might have been smoke from the engine, but they're taking the side case off the gearbox, so maybe it was more of an oil leak situation.
There's Verstappen sitting in the cockpit, patiently waiting. And so is Chris Neville, who is standing by with one of the drivers of the number 64 Corvette, second in GT1, Ollie Gavin.
Yeah, and Ollie looks like he's trying to wake up because he's going to be getting behind the wheel at 64 here. You and the 63 got split up very early in this race because of that first caution, and you just haven't been able to climb back into the fight with him.
No, it's been tough. You know, each time we look like we've got just close enough to have a go at them. The cautions come out again and just split us up and put us another sort of couple of minutes back, and so we keep just about getting there and then having another issue. There has been a lot of cautions this year, you know, whether it's for accidents or oil on the track or debris or whatever. It's been pretty brutal out there, I have to say. You know, there's been lots of aggressive driving and also some pretty crazy driving by some people. But you know, we're plugging away, and we're fortunate that we seem to have quite a lead in hand over the competition, and really it looks pretty good for an all Corvette GT1 podium right now. So we'll have to see how the Luke Alphon cars go, but they're performing well, and I think we've seen off the Aston Martin and the Lamborghini, so great for Corvette.
Now I can see there's still a replacement nose back there after Marcel took the car off the racetrack last night. How is the 64?
Well, it's okay. It's compromised a little, I think. You know, the front splitter's maybe got a little bit of damage to it, but certainly it's handling well enough for us to challenge the 63 car. But it's whether it's going to be good enough for us to really be able to get by them and then stretch out a bit of a lead. We might have to. It might be that something happens to them, but who knows? You know, there's still over 7.5 hours to go, so there's still plenty of time for stuff to happen, and it's going to warm up. It might even rain, so we'll just have to keep our eyes on the skies and see what happens.
Talking about that rivalry between the 63 and the 64, you've had so much success with this team. How bad did the 64 want to grab the last victory in GT1 for Corvette?
Well, they want it like nothing else, you know. Mike West here, big crew chiefing us for the last couple of years, and he wants it real bad. We've got a new engineer, Ben Brady, and you know, everybody on this team really just desires that victory so much. But I think more than anything, going away from here with a victory for Corvette is the most important thing. You know, last ever race for the C6R here with us, and you know, if we can stand on that top step, whichever car, 63, 64, I think the whole team will be delighted.
Now, if it came down to it, are we going to see any door-to-door contact like we saw at Mid-Ohio coming out of pit lane?
I can't possibly say. You know, we'll have to see. I mean, this race so very rarely comes down to that sort of door-to-door action. But I'm game if the other car is.
Have fun, bud.
The dilemma of a race driver and teammate at Le Mans. Well, you know, we'd like our teammates to have a little, not a big problem. We don't want them to, you know, fall off the face of the earth or something, but maybe just allow us to get ahead just a little bit.
Now, here is a car, Christian Albers coming in, that needed to come in the worst of ways. We saw Christian about 4 laps ago shaking his head side to side, which means his neck is completely knackered. Then we saw him go off the road the first time. Then we saw him go off the road the second time. And he was making a lot of fundamental mistakes, locking up brakes, just overdriving the car. He is knackered. That guy right there needs out of the car right now, and he finally made it to the pits to get relief.
Well, that's surprising to see a guy with Formula One experience, as Albers has, just find himself not quite in the shape he needs.
Yeah, I mean,
to take these stresses.
He just about threw it in the fence a couple times. One down there going into Arnage. Just got it all wrong under the brake zone down there. We've seen crashes already.
And he also went across one of the chicanes, lost it big time going into the chicane, and crashed across the apex on the way in and went on the outside going out. So yeah, was making a bit of a big zero. That
you can see when the driver starts shaking their neck back and forth that they're either got a cramp in their neck or they're really locking up, and that's really not a good situation to have happen.
Of course, if the neck muscle fails entirely, then you've got a problem. Remember, many years ago, Le Mans winner Price Cobb was racing a Porsche 962 around that little bandbox at Lime Rock Park. Finally pulled in, climbed out of the car, and pit reporter went up and said, "What's your problem?" He said, "I can't hold my head up." And he said, "Well, when did you hurt your neck?" He said, "I haven't hurt my neck. I just can't hold my head up."
I can relate to that. I mean, that's when I saw him wiggling his head back and forth. I knew exactly what he was experiencing. And it's not good once your neck muscle gives up, like you said. I mean, you can't even hold the hat on.
Well, these cars do develop a lot of G-force, a big side load. I mean, it's a heck of a lot. We see these onboard shots, and they just appear to be just sitting there, but these cars develop huge G-loads, obviously side, fore, and aft. When you got 1,100 pounds-feet of torque on a Peugeot or an Audi on acceleration, I tell you what, they definitely get your attention on the acceleration, and they brake like there's no tomorrow. Of course.
Yeah, he's going through Tete Rouge, probably pulling nearly 4 Gs all the way through that corner.
And through the chicanes here, both ways.
Yeah.
There's the number 16 Pescarolo Sport Judd-powered Spider for Henri Pescarolo. The sister car crashed heavily during the dark hours. Currently shown in 6th place, Christophe Tinceau.
That's a car that the number 7 car of Manassian, the Peugeot of number 7, would be having its sights. It'll take some time to get up to it, but it's only just about 3 laps behind them, and there's no doubt about the speed that Manassian is doing. Last lap was a 3:26. Tinceau's last lap was a 3:36. So at 10 seconds a lap, you make up a lot of ground. Sunshine was brilliant just a few moments ago. Seems to be going into reinforced what Oliver Gavin said about it might rain. It is still, the sun is still out, but not like it was. I'm just trying to think of how many mornings I've woken up to the sunshine at Le Mans. Out of the 77 runnings, I think they've had about 40 of them with me.
That's right, one way or another. Driving or commentating.
Driving or commentating, yeah.
And we still have a long way to go. Coming up on 7 hours remaining. 7 long hours of flat-out racing here at Le Mans. There are the 4 class leaders. We'll be back with more in just a moment. Welcome back live to Le Mans. Strange moment here. This is the 2nd place car in GT2, the number 92 JW Motorsport
That's
Ferrari.
gone down the old White House. That's down towards the old White House corner. He's obviously run straight on at the entry of the Porsche curves.
That used to be the racetrack.
Yeah, but not anymore.
Not anymore, no.
And now you're riding with David Brabham.
We've got to the top of the hour, 8 a.m. at Le Mans. Top of the hour wherever you are. We thank you for joining us live here on Speed at the 77th 24 Hours of Le Mans. Along with Dorsey Schrader, David Hobbs, I'm Bob Varsha. Here's our Valvoline race recap. Awkward moment at the start of the race as the factory Peugeot Pedro Lamy was hit by the privateer Pescarolo car of Jean-Christophe Ouillon. You saw what happened to Lamy, who had to limp 8.5 miles back to the pits, dropping bits of race car all the way. But back came the PlayStation team for Henri Pescarolo, up to 3rd at one point before this accident took out Benoit Treluyer. You see race officials talking with Henri Pescarolo about the status of his driver, who it appears will be all right. But it was a scary, scary accident during the early morning hours for Pescarolo Sport. Henri Pescarolo has seen it all here at Le Mans, 4-time winner of the race. Truly a French national treasure. He's been involved in auto racing for over 40 years as both driver and car owner. With more, here's Lee Diffie.
As a driver, Pescarolo and his famous green helmet were a winner 4 times here at Le Mans. 3 of them came while driving a French Matra. The footage is from 1973, Henri's 2nd win, when he and co-driver Gerard Larousse did the entire 24 hours together. After his driving days were over, he became a team owner full-time in 2000. Both his cars occupied the front row in 05, which was perhaps his best shot at victory. But going against the Audis has been similar to David taking on Goliath. 2nd place has been the best finish for Pescarolo as the owner. It was accomplished in 05 and again in 2006 when Eric Ellery, Frank Montagny and World Rally champion Sebastian Loeb were the meat in a German juggernaut sandwich. Pescarolo joined his team on the podium, having fought the good fight, but frustrated that victory is so close but yet so far away.
It's got to the point where I'm using the words Pescarolo and Peugeot as synonyms. Action continues on the racetrack. Right now, let's find out more about the Aston Martin that appears to be hors de combat. Here's Justin Bell with Jos Verstappen.
Jos, it was a very odd sight to see you sitting in the car about 10 minutes ago as you got your helmet on, drinking a bottle of water, as the car slowly disintegrated around you as they took more bits off. What's actually been happening?
We don't know exactly what happened, but it's something in the gearbox, I guess. I heard a small noise just straight before, and then I arrive in 6th gear, and then something broke. I don't know what exactly happened, but it's something with the gearbox.
Definitely not in the ProDrive handbook of how to go to Le Mans, but it's obvious you're seeing the other car having a really solid run in 4th place, approaching Le Mans, and when you have a setback like this, how hard is it to get back in the car again?
I must say, I mean, if something like this happened, you know, the chances is over. But still, you know, we want to finish the race, and as soon as we get back in the car, we give it everything again. So it's no problem for me, but it's a shame for everybody who works so hard to make this happen. But we will see what will happen next.
We certainly will. Thanks, Jos. Guys.
Well, we saw that little bit of smoke come out, which means that there's a little bitty hole that was poked in the side of the gear case, and when it smoked really big, the pieces got out. I think is what they're looking for.
Slight issue. There's the 3rd place GT1 car from Luke Alphand Adventures. It is a Corvette podium at this point, as you heard Oliver Gavin say a short while ago. The 2 Corvette Racing Factory cars, the 63 and 64, and then the Alphand Adventures Corvette C6R, currently in the hands of Frenchman Yannick Claret.
Had a pretty uneventful race. This car has been running under the radar, if you will, for most of the night, which is sometimes the way you want it to be.
Absolutely. It's funny how the whole mind game of a 24-hour race works. David, you and I have talked in the past about what it's like for a driver. If you're going to brake, you want to brake early in the race. You don't want to get 20 hours into this thing after all of that work, the kind of thing Jos Verstappen and his teammates have been putting in, only to have the car brake late in the going.
I have to tell you, I was never a big fan of this finish at all costs. If you're 2,000 laps down, we must finish. I tell you, if the thing breaks, walk away and leave it, because it is not a great achievement to finish if you're 100 laps behind. And and if it is going to break, for goodness sake, I hope it breaks before dinner so you can get a decent French dinner down here, which is what happened when I drove for Reinhold Jost. You talk about coming with high expectations. I mean, myself and Sol van der Merwe were the absolute odds-on favourites in 87. And boy, we hadn't done more than about 40 minutes, and there was some sort of fuel issue with the car. And Reinhold only had the 1 car in the race, so we all went back to his chateau and had a fantastic evening. It was very funny, and we had a great time and all that, but it just wasn't the object of the exercise. Right. The whole object of the exercise is being here on the Sunday afternoon and collecting that 1st place trophy, which we probably would have got, but there it is. That's life. And but if it's going to break early. Don't, for goodness sake, drag it. Watch it round to the end and then quit.
Yeah, I remember with Dyson, we were running along there leading with 22 hours into the event, and the engine goes. Well, there's 2 hours to go.
When we talk about Pescarolo just now, his first win was in 1972 when he drove with Graham Hill, and I was in the other car with Jean-Pierre Jabouillet, and we were lying second for like 16 hours. And Margaret and I were walking up to the club, that new club that you can see in the. To watch the finish, and I suddenly said to Margaret, I said, I don't think I've seen our car go by. So you stand there and you count them all again, you think, no, he didn't go by. So I rushed back to the pits, and the gearbox had broken down at the Mulsanne hairpin with about 20 minutes to go.
63 Corvette is coming in for its pit stop.
Pretty soon they'll be listening for every little sound from the race car.
There was a yellow flag at pit in down there. I don't know, it was just a stationary yellow. Didn't see a reason for it. Watch the Corvette boys. Or not.
Who then disappeared when the picture faded and the Earth stopped in its rotation and we all flew off into space. The Corvette heads for its pit. And wait for our friends from French television to pick up the broadcast. down from the Dunlop curves. Well, this part of the racetrack has been reconfigured a number of times over the years. What did we decide? About 13 individual major changes to this racetrack, but some things never change.
Like those trees, yeah, those poplar trees. When I first raced here, they just used to paint the bottom of those. Up about the first 6 feet, they used to paint them white so that you could see them at night.
And hopefully not aim for them.
Well, that way you wouldn't hit them if they were painted white.
Well, absolutely.
So it was nice and safe. But there was certainly no barrier there. And if anybody was around last night when they saw the piece on Dan Gurney and those 427.4s rushing down Le Mans here, down the Mulsanne Straight, not a trace of guardrail in sight, just ditches and the trees.
That well over 200 miles an hour.
This is the area where we were also talking last night about the low-lying smoke. And in the old days, of course, this was much more rural than now. It's been urbanized. There's all sorts of houses and shops and stuff at the side of the road now. But back in the old days, it used to get very foggy out here about this time of day, and it would be this low-lying mist. So you could find yourself going down the Mulsanne Straight at just about 200, and you'd suddenly hit a bank of fog, which is always a bit of an attention getter.
Remember one year we were at Le Hunandier, the bistro, the cafe on the backside, and it had rained heavily, and they had stopped practice while it had rained, and then we could hear the sound of the engines as they came rushing up the Mulsanne straightaway once the cars went back on track, and the cars would flash by so close. Oh, one of the little bollards, those plastic posts has fallen down. Anyway, the cars would go by, they would throw these enormous rooster tails of spray in the air, and it settled very annoyingly on our lunch. It was all very inconvenient. We'll be back to Le Mans. Welcome back live to Le Mans. There is the category leader in the LMP2 class, the number 31 Porsche RS Spyder that sat on pole for Essex Racing. They've been battling with the similar car of the Nave Team Go, the number 5 car. Those two cars have shared the lead in the LMP2 class virtually the entire 24 hours of Le Mans to this point. There's the number 5. Right now, the 31 is solidly in the class lead after lots of mechanical problems, mainly due, according to one of its drivers, Sasha Maassen, pounding the curbs just that little bit too much, suffering problems with the aerodynamic splitter at the front.
I had some great shots yesterday of all of these guys early on with that tremendous pace they were sitting. They were just hammering those curbs, getting air under all 4 tires. I mean, that's just a little bit much for a 24.
And as the car continues on its way, let's hear from the newest member of our broadcast team here on this Sunday morning, Brian Till, with more on the 92 Ferrari that found itself on the escape road down by the old White House stretch of track. Brian?
Bob, I just checked in. The 92 was in the garage. Rob Bell hopped out of that car. I'm not sure who hopped back in it, but it seems that they had a clutch issue. Right now, what they did when it was in the garage, the car was up on jacks, the engine cover was off, putting clutch fluid in, trying to bleed that clutch, get the hydraulics back in the system, get the clutch working. Could have been that he simply went off at the escape road because he could not get a gear and he got stuck in neutral. So right now, that car has dropped from 3rd back to 4th. The 76 has moved up to 3rd, and hopefully they can get that Dunlop shod Ferrari back up onto a podium position. Chris?
Well, Brian, I just went over to Corvette to check on their weather radars, and what it's pretty much saying right now is a 60% chance of rain between now and about 12 o'clock today, and at that point in time the sun should be out in full force. But looking at the skies, it doesn't look that threatening out here, so I think everybody who thought it was going to be raining this morning, I think everybody's starting to think that I don't think we're getting any showers, and it's probably going to stay dry and then get pretty warm right around 12 o'clock.
All right, thank you, Chris. As we mentioned, that part of racetrack where the 92 found itself used to be a part of the Le Mans circuit, leading down to the White House corner. David?
Well, that is the full width of the road, and when we saw Dan Gurney bollocking down there in that Mark II Ford, he would be going in this bit of road, and that's as wide as it was, and that's exactly how it was, with the bank up like that, no guardrail, no nothing. And he'd go through this cutting at round about 220 miles an hour in that Mark II Ford.
And as I recall, there is a bridge over the creek down there.
Just up at the top of the picture, you'll see it coming into view. There's a couple of earthen berms, and just past those berms, there's now a roundabout, and just past that, there's a little tiny bridge over a ditch, and all four wheels used to come off the deck going over there.
And you'd go whacking through there in a Porsche 917 or a GT40 or whatever, 200 plus miles an hour.
And that, you saw how wide it was, and that's what it was like. And that went into the White House, which is a very, very fast corner. And that was before they built the Porsche curves. They built the Porsche curves to really get rid of White House because it was too fast. When they called White House, there was a White House.
There was a house.
There was a house on the one side and the barn for the house on the other side of the road.
And you'd split the two.
And you split the two, right. And the farm would sit out the front there all day long.
With all of his friends.
Monsieur, you're going too fast for my house. It's very quick, huh?
The fastest lap in the GT2 category for the 76 car.
And I see Oliver Gavin trying to unseat Johnny O'Connell. Has done the new fastest lap in the GT1 class as well.
That fast lap was from the 76 car, the IMSA Performance Porsche, which is now third in class, so it's no longer an all Ferrari podium in GT2. Raymond Narak.
And Nicholas Manassian in the number 7 car that has had so much trouble keeps on cranking off laps between 3:24 and 3:27. His 3:24 is the quickest lap of the race, to try and catch up with the Audi of Lotterer and Neil Gianni in the number 13 car. So he's cracking on here. He's a couple of laps behind that Neil Gianni car, but he's got plenty of time to catch up yet. Because if it rains now, you know, we were talking about how when they started this race, how green the track was because of all that rain on Wednesday. And obviously the track only gets used by these guys once a year. Well, now it's not green now. There's got plenty of rubber, plenty of oil, plenty of all sorts of other stuff down there. If it rains now, I tell you what, it is going to be as slick as a slippery road.
Speaking of slick.
Oh, dear.
Just ask the number 14. Is Waltzman, Karthikeyan, Lotterer.
Well, that's what happened. He knows that Nicholas Manassian is breathing down his neck. And that is at Arnage, I think.
8th place car. The old Audi R10, still plenty potent. Remember, that's one of the cars with just 2 drivers because their co-driver, Narain Karthikeyan, was so excited about starting his first Le Mans that he hopped over the pit wall, forgetting that the level of the racetrack is actually a foot or two lower than the level of the pit lane. Fell down, dislocated his shoulder, and the ACO doctor said, no, 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 no.
No, no. Monsieur, you cannot drive in our race.
So Charles Waltzman and Andre Lotterer have been shouldering the load. There's the Oreca. Sohail Yari sharing with Nicolas Lapierre of GP2 fame and Olivier Panis, former winner of the Formula One Grand Prix of Monaco.
Of course, a lot of drivers used to do the 24, which is 2 drivers. Of course, that was well before these cars that pull the G-forces that they do, and the overall effort was a lot less.
Yeah, you could drive for 4 hours. We used to do 4-hour stints when there was only 2 drivers. You'd do 2, and usually about a 2-hour stint each, depending on the fuel load. And then at night you'd go to 4 hours on, 4 hours off. So you get at least some rest, but the cars were nothing like as physical to drive as these. It's just nothing like the G-Force. And when they were fast, and they were very skittish, I mean, the GT40 back in 1970, 68, 69, I mean, it would do 212, 214 mile an hour down the straight with very little horsepower compared to what they've got today. But of course, it had no drag because it had no downforce either.
Keeping an eye on Christophe Tinceau in the Pescarolo Judd.
Still got traffic even at this time in the morning, and you've got to be careful. These guys are all getting tired. The road is getting slippery, as we've seen.
It's Tinceau in the yellow helmet, open cockpit car, 6th in the overall and in the LMP1 class.
An abandoned car there up against the guardrail.
That's been there all night. I mean, that's been there. It left the flashers on for at least 10 hours.
It's not a great place to be there. I mean,
no, it isn't. I'm surprised it's still there.
It's a pretty solid thing to hit if you.
Yeah, we had the 2 hours behind the pace car. You think they would have drugged that off to some safer area, but they never did. They left it there with the flashers going, and I think finally someone just went up there and turned them off, or maybe the battery just gave it up. But we wondered all night long what it was that was sitting over there.
As you see, it battled for position. Let's check the old email bag at LeMans24onspeed@gmail.com. Bill has asked, in the prototype categories, those being LMP1 and LMP2, what are the theories surrounding open versus closed cockpit designs? And that's a good question. When Audi came into this sport originally at the end of the 1990s, they actually built both an enclosed cockpit and an open cockpit, or Spider design, to test the merits of both before they went with the open cockpit choice.
And it's surprising, too, because a lot of it has to do with rules and so forth. But the closed cockpit car is more aerodynamic as far as being cleaner on top end. When you're running up around 200+ miles per hour, that car with the windscreen is a better aerodynamic piece than the open cockpit, which of course has a tremendous amount of turbulence up around the driver's head and behind it. Having driven both of them, it's more pleasant to drive with your head out there in the open because it's not so darn hot. It's hot. Of course, now they have air conditioners, so maybe the coupe wouldn't be such a bad thing. That air on your helmet is just tremendously hard on your neck as it's pushing your head back at 200 miles per hour.
It seems to be just really the designer and the wind tunnels, the whim of the designer. You know, some guy's going to say, well, we know that the closed cockpit car is going to work better, and then which we just looked at in the pits, and here comes an open cockpit car. Both seem to be pretty effective. The downside with the closed cockpit, of course, is the issue of the windscreen itself getting pitted, marked, and of course wet in the rain. And of course you do have a problem when it rains and they steam up inside. There's just nothing you can do about it.
Timo Bernard gets out. Romain Dumas gets in. The number 3 Audi currently shown 16th in the overall. Excuse me, in class. Deeper than that in the overall. We'll take a break and return with more from Le Mans. Don't go away.
Feet don't fail me now. Just one more step, just one more mile.
Welcome back to the 77th 24 hours of Le Mans. Approaching the bottom of the hour. That is the sound of power, diesel power, but not the Audi diesel power that has dominated this race in recent years. Peugeot in the best position it's been in a long time to win this race finally and end the Audi winning streak. Let's learn about some of the problems one of the Audis has suffered this weekend. Chris Neville is standing by with Timo Bernard.
Well, Timo just jumped out of the 3 car. And Timo, we talked to Brad Kettler a little while ago, and he's pretty much saying that now this is a test session, trying to figure out how to keep the intercooler cool in the Audi, so hopefully it can help out the 1 car later. How hard is that as a driver to know that your race is essentially over, but you still got to learn for the team?
I mean, let's put it that way. I'm still very happy to drive the Audi R15 TDI. I mean, around this fantastic racetrack. I mean, for sure, it's a little unfortunate that our race, after 5 hours already, we lost the race already. We're down a lot of laps, but for us, it's very important to keep on supporting the team, because we're one team at Audi, and we need to support the 1 car, and also for ourselves. we can get more practice on this race circuit, and I hope it will be not my last experience in a P1 car.
Well, you and Romain, Porsche drivers being lent over to Audi this weekend. How exciting was this chance after competing against Audi in the LMP2 when the Penske was so strong in ALMS?
I mean, we had a lot of fantastic races. I mean, when Romain and myself were with the Porsche RS Spider and with Team Penske, and they were struggling against us sometimes, I have to say. We had some very nice fights. And I think now we're really welcoming this team because they know we had a lot of fights, hard and fair fights, but we respect each other. And I think that's very important. And I think both sides benefit from that deal.
Keep at it, Timo. Hey guys, while we were at break there, when the 3-car was in, the officials came over and kind of slapped Brad Kettler on the wrist here for how they did the pit stop. And I asked Brad, I said, well, what were you getting yelled at about? And he said, well, we were being a little bit too aggressive as we were changing the tires. When we took the tire off the car, we set it down too hard. They want us to set it down a little bit softer.
Great. Now we're into Feng Shui here in the latter stages of the 77th Le Mans.
Be gentle, monsieur. Be aware of your tire. We do not want to hurt the daily feelings of the tire.
That's right. That's very expensive asphalt you're laying it on. 16th in class and 31st in the overall is the number 3 Audi at this point. And right there is our Team Seattle Ferrari. Don Kitts sharing with Joe Foster and Patrick Dempsey. Plugging along, still shown 10th in the GT2 battle, but racking up lap after lap with donations for the Seattle Children's Hospital and related charities. There's a look at the 99. 8th place car, JMB Racing Ferrari. Christophe Bouchou, who has probably driven about every class of car you can at Le Mans in recent years. Now what's going on here? This is the Pescarolo pits.
That's the Roadster, the car that's been soldiering along, but they've got the front end off of it, and it's of course back in its garage.
That'll be bad news. Pescarolo here at Le Mans, always a local favorite.
They sometimes hold those noses up so we can't see what they're up to.
Is being overtaken at a pretty amazing rate of knots by one of the Peugeots.
I think that's being blown off, not overtaken.
Well, Christophe Bouchou has seen both sides of that coin.
Absolutely. And when you think how fast that car is in its street, guys, let alone what it is when it's just tweaked up for a race and you see it being blown by, it gives you an idea of just how fast these LMP1 cars really are.
There's a look at one of the American Le Mans Series teams, Krone Racing. Car prepared by the Risi Competizione, who of course also prepare the car that is currently running in the class lead as the Pescarolo Judd is pushed back into the pit lane. And chasing that Krone Racing Ferrari, you saw the Spiker. There it is, last in that group of 3 cars. A very, very dramatically styled sports car based on aviation designs that turns up year after year here at Le Mans. Hand-built car powered by an Audi V8. Pretty neat looking device all around. And that car is going very, very well. 7th in class right now. Currently in the hands of Jarek Yanis. Oops.
Gravel trap.
Now that is a car that's in contention, the 13 car of Neil Yanni, who speed viewers will know in GP2. Kalo did some IRL as well.
So close to the asphalt. I mean,
he races in A1 GP as well. Well, he has a chance to think that over. Let's take a look at what happened to him. Oops.
Just a little bit over exuberant on the throttle pedal there.
Yeah, and he had the brakes on to stop it going in the gravel, but it's too late. Oh, beached.
Throttle oversteer. Let's go to Brian Till.
Frank Montagny has brought the number 8 Peugeot to pit lane. Stefan Sarazen will take over. Sarazen so blindingly fast in this Peugeot 908. 3 years in a row he's had the pole. Interesting, as I look at the back of the number 8 car, both safety screens blown out of the back, so obviously a lot of rubber pickup, but you can see those tires in the back. You look down, the screens are missing. It was my understanding that those screens needed to be there, so it'll be interesting to see what the officials have to say about that. The rules a little bit ambiguous. Help me here,
It's a
Bob.
French word.
Ambiguous this year. I'm tired. It's 6:30 in the morning. But he's away. But it was my understanding that all the louvers on the bodywork had to be in place. All the louvers had to be in place. All the safety screens needed to be in place. And what we're seeing is right now, obviously late in the race, a lot of these body parts are missing off of these cars. The question is, will they have to replace them by the end of it? Like I said, a little bit ambiguous as far as the rules go. Nothing really black and white. A lot of gray.
We saw one of those tail sections get replaced earlier on in the middle of the night because one of those panels, safety panels as they call it, were blown out. Of course, the safety aspect of it is that rubber coming off the tire without a grill there goes right down through that chute. If you're following that car, it hits you smack in the face.
Brian Till really is tired. It's not 6:30, it's 8:30 in the morning in Le Mans. You just have to remember to accent the proper syllable and you'll be just fine.
It just feels like 6:30.
A little syllable will get you every time.
Feels like 6:30 on Tuesday.
Yes.
It feels like 2:30 here.
Now let's join the forgotten Neville brother, Chris.
Well, Brian, I was just listening to you talk about the Peugeot, and I ran over and I grabbed back Brad Kettler just to kind of get Audi's take on the whole, having to have all the bits and pieces on the car. And he said this is something that we really went to the ACO and tried to figure out after the incident at Spa with the Porsche that was essentially disqualified from winning the race and then got the win back. And he said essentially the ACO never gave us clarification on whether the car needs to be completely intact like it started the race. So all body parts, all screens in place. So essentially what we've done is made sure that we can be in a position to replace all that stuff as quick as possible if we were ever to be brought in during the race or right at the end of the race. But he says a race like this, I mean, how can they expect these teams after running 24 hours flat out to have all of that stuff in place? So he's going to think he thinks it's a pretty fine line that they're going to cross if they start making cars come in. But if they do, Audi's ready for that.
And speaking of coming in, here comes the 008 Aston Martin Lola. Big burst of smoke. I'm not sure if he locked up to make the pit entrance or what.
This car puffed a little smoke and then another burst of smoke.
I don't think that was brake smoke. I think that was blue smoke from within.
The downshift. They're going to go ahead and fuel.
Well, that didn't take long. I don't think so. I think that's going to go in the garage.
They're already loosening the front covers.
It did puff some smoke a little bit there before, and you see a bunch, you know, it puffed a little smoke and then it did the same thing and went up more. They're up in the front suspension area again. I don't know if the master cylinders are up in there for the clutch or not.
On board the number 7 Peugeot, currently 9th. The hands of Nicolas Manassian.
Oh boy.
Oh wow. 2 Peugeots side by side here. Nose to tail.
Let's hear from one of the Peugeot drivers. Frank Montagny has climbed out and Brian Till is with him.
That's exactly right, Bob. Now, Frank, the car looks to be so perfect, but were it for not that mistake or that problem last night, I should say, with the suspension, are you thinking what could have been?
Well,
They were a problem for sure, but they were also a mistake. So if you combine the both of them, for sure it's. I'm not really happy about what happened. Really, it's like the car, the problem for sure, but we made a mistake. We cannot afford this kind of stuff. But anyway, the car is doing good, and we have ordered to stay calm and to don't push. So. We keep it there, we got a target. I was a little bit lower than the target, and I think the number 9 was a little bit higher, so maybe we catch up, we see.
You certainly have had good speed in these last several hours. If it comes down to it at the end of the race, and there are two Peugeots nose to tail and the 8 car is second, will it have the chance to go for the battle, or will they call it and say, let's run to the finish this way?
I think they're already called, but never know what happened, you know?
Best of luck.
One lap gap between the two front-running Peugeots, Brabham and Sarrazin right now. But another gap of a lap back to Tom Christensen, still pounding away in the number 1 Audi. Lee Diffey will take over when we return to Le Mans.
Speed's coverage of the 24 Hours of Le Mans is brought to you by Audi, Truth in Engineering, and by Valvoline. Only Valvoline guarantees your engine for up to 300,000 miles. Register at Valvoline.com.
Yes, and we thank Valvoline for those race recaps that we have been enjoying all throughout the broadcast. Lee Diffey back with David Hobbs, Dorsey Schrader, Brian and Chris still working pit lane. And how about these Collis Audis? An amazing performance when you consider first time here at Le Mans, and all 6 drivers, of course we should say 5 because of Narain Karthikeyan not making the start, all rookies and have done a very good job. And a man who calls his racing home in Japan is really enjoying his first time here to Le Mans. Chris?
Yeah, Andre Lotterer just emerged from the 14 car. And Andre, most guys are exhausted at this point in time, and they've got 2 other teammates. But because Narain was injured yesterday, you and Charles have been doing it alone. How exhausted are you?
I'm really fit, no problem. You know, with adrenaline, you stay awake. Once you're in the car, it's fine. This stint was kind of tough, but it's okay. You know, you can relax behind the steering. The car is comfortable to drive, and of course, for your mind and concentration, you always have to be alert. You're always driving at 300 kilometers an hour, so you're not allowed to do any mistakes. Could be dangerous, but so far it's been good. We had a little problem with the gearbox, unfortunately, so we lost a couple of spots. But we're still in the race, and we're looking good.
The opportunity for you to drive this car only came about a week ago, and you had never even sat in the car until it hit the racetrack here on Wednesday. How tough was that?
Yeah, it was not easy. I never drove a sports car before. I have a lot of experience with Formula cars and GTs, but to learn the car in the rain, it was raining, so it was really difficult. And then the second day in the dry, I did just step by step, and then in the end I managed also to do the best lap time of our car, so it was a nice surprise. And I have to say, sports car racing is great, and I really would love to be here next year again.
A lot of drivers also say the diesel is a little bit unusual the first time. How was it for you?
Yeah, of course, at the beginning you realize how much you use sound as a reference to be consistent, and it's an imagination of speed through the corners. So with the diesel you just roll with no sound, but you get used to it, and actually for 24 hours it's more comfortable to have less noise and gives you less headache.
Well, you guys have done a great job, and we've been impressed, so go get some rest.
All right, thanks, bye.
Really talented young driver who was the 2006 Super GT champion in Japan and regular in Formula Nippon. He's been as high as the runner-up in the championship, and he was, well, many years ago, a Jaguar Formula One test driver.
This car is one of those living nightmares that you just, I just can't imagine, you know, the motivation to drive it fast. And as Lotterer was just saying, you know, you're always doing 300 kilometers an hour here, practically everywhere. You're going fast. You don't want to make a mistake. But, you know, the stuffing is not right out of you at this stage of the game when you're just, goodness knows how many laps down.
Just had so much time in the pit box, hasn't it? Neil Yarney has been able to continue in the 13.
He's going quite well. Once they've got him out of that gravel trap, he was stuck in there. Didn't take much to get that car high-centered. He wasn't that far off the racetrack, but once you get in that gravel with the ride height of these cars, you're not going anywhere.
Well, he was in danger of losing his position to the Pescarolo, the sole remaining Pescarolo of Bruce Giuani. However, he has been able to maintain 7th place. Incidentally, up front for the overall, even though we heard Frank Montagny say, I think the race has already been called between the 9 and the 8 if things remain as is, Stefan Sarazen has got within 1 minute 49 seconds of Brabham for the lead. His last lap, a 3:27, 2 seconds faster than David Brabham. That 8 is flying.
Well, Nicholas Manassian down in 9th spot in the number 7 car, just done a 3:29, so they're all hammering along, and I can't imagine that the management at Peugeot are not thinking in some sort of team order here at some stage. You know, you can't just let these guys duke it out. There's a long way to go yet, and that Audi of Tom Christensen is lying, lurking just right there.
You know, 6 hours to go. You can't be hammering the cars.
I mean, that's a whole race.
Yeah, that's a long race.
I mean, it's 4 Grand Prix to go.
And just think, a mistake, an error, some kind of a problem. And in these final 6 hours, that 007 Aston Martin of Thomas Enger and his teammates could be on the podium. For American Le Mans Series fans and supporters, things are looking good. We've got 2 American teams leading 2 of the 4 classes. In GT2, of course, it's Risi Competizione, and in GT1, it's the Corvette Racing Boys dominating. Working our way up through the classes in P2, the Essex Porsche RS Spyder untouched in this race and still boasts a 2-lap lead over the Navi Team Go Porsche RS Spyder, and Sasha Masson is behind the wheel at the moment, doing his best to bridge the gap to Casper Elgard. However, there's a lot of attention being paid to the 13. Speedy Racing Team Sabar, Lola Aston Martin, because it is very much eating into the gap in front of it. It is catching the Collis Audi of Charles Walsman. There's the margin right there. You're talking about the fight for 6th place.
Which with 6 hours to go could easily transpose itself into a podium at the end if a couple of miscues in front of them. So these guys really trying pretty hard here. He's the 13 cars a couple of seconds a lap quicker than Walsman.
And he's pushing very, very hard, using pretty much all of the racetrack there is available. And we've already seen him in the gravel trap once already.
Right there, he was in the gravel trap.
Yeah.
So he's pretty lucky to get out of there so quickly. I mean, they towed him off and he was back in action within just 2 or 3 minutes.
One minute 40, the lead David Brabham has over Stefan Sarazen. So Stefan just keeps on eating into that lead that Brabham has. That's Patrick Dempsey aboard his Ferrari 430. Now there's dramas at the back of the car, Patrick, and this car has been in pit lane for some time.
They've had a lot of things taken off the back there, back laying on the ground back there. I can't really tell what they're working on, but there was a bunch of pieces that they had removed from that back panel.
Brian, what do you have?
I can add. Here's the deal, guys. There is an L-shaped bracket at the back that goes from the quarter panel down to that rear valance piece that runs horizontally across the back of the car. They were hit by a prototype earlier, and it damaged that piece. With the rear wing putting a lot of downforce on it as the race has progressed, that bracket has cracked, and the rear valance has kind of dropped slightly. They're concerned that with the continued downforce and the vibration, that could come off, not only endangering the drivers of this car, but also leaving a piece back on the racetrack. So they're going going to fix that right now. It just kind of leads to that larger gray area that we were talking about before. For these guys, it seems to be a safety issue that they want to concentrate on making sure that it's fixed. But the question is just how much has to be fixed. And we've talked about that all race long. Safety screens in the back of these cars being there or not being there. And in the Spa rules and disqualifications after the last LMS race at Spa with cars being disqualified for missing balances and things that were knocked off in competition. So a lot of gray area right now. This is a safety repair, but we've seen a lot of body work up and down pit lane that is askew and damaged. And the question is, will it have to be replaced, or will there be repercussions later in post-race tech?
Well, the other, safety certainly when you're talking about a wing at the speeds these cars are going is a huge factor. You cannot just lose that wing without having catastrophic result. And if it comes off at the wrong place on a high-speed section like Tête Rouge, well, you've got a huge accident on your hands.
Patrick Dempsey, Don Kitch, and Joe Foster are in the top 10. They remain in the top 10 in the GT2 class, which is a fabulous performance on debut with their advanced engineering Ferrari, and they have many laps advantage over the Drayson Racing Aston Martin. So although they're stationary on pit road, they do have somewhat of a buffer. Now, to finish this race on debut is one thing. To finish in the top 10 in class will be another. So if they can stay there in the next 6 hours, that will be a huge moment for these boys.
Lee, it's interesting to note you talked about the performance these guys have had this week. This is their first unscheduled stop of the race, and as I look inside at the board for Children's Hospital, over $165,000 so far being raised just to this point. I think a little more than 6 hours left in this race, or right at 6 hours. 5:59:45 is what the official time down the pit lane says. So a great performance, not only for Patrick Dempsey, but Joe Foster, who has been around this game for such a long time, as well as Don Kitch, this whole team. And once again, Children's Hospital, over 165 grand and almost 6 hours left to go.
Well, I think the brother-in-law of the World Feed director must be working on the 13 car, because we haven't seen anything else for the last 20 minutes. However, here we are. We do see something else. And it is the lead car of David Brabham, now down to 1:36. Sarrazin just keeps chipping away. And I think what we're doing here is we're seeing a montage of our respective class leaders. Casper Elgaard back to Johnny O'Connell in the 63 Corvette. And we should also see the Risi Ferrari here momentarily as well, right on cue. Back-to-back wins in GT2. Is it going the way of the Houston-based team? What a remarkable performance that would be. And Mika Salo not having driven anything, literally, except his street car and the odd rally car since Sebring, to come back in and defend their win in less than 6 hours' time. What a storyline that'll be.
That Brabham car, I mean, it's 5 seconds a lap slower than Sarrazin in the number 8 car. So I don't know whether Jeff's got a problem, or whether he's David's got a problem, or whether he's just got a problem. I mean, 5 seconds a lap's a lot.
Yeah, it is. I mean, he's on slow cruise control right now. Unless there's going to be team orders, I don't think so, though.
Manassian, mind you, in the other one, the 7 car down in 9th spot, he's cranking out laps in the 25. So he's 3 seconds a lap quicker than Sarrazin. So he is really humming along.
And frustration for those guys that their race really did get off to a bad start.
What was that all about?
Incidentally, Henri Pescarolo blames the Works Audi for that contact between Jean-Christophe Bouillon and Pedro Lamy, and put the complete blame on the Lollipop Man for the Works Peugeot. So,
well, I think he was right. I mean, the car's coming in. It's got to come in. It can't just suddenly stop in the middle of the pit road. And they should never have let that car out right in front of the car coming in.
It's a really unique moment for David Brabham out in front with an opportunity to win overall. David's in his early 40s, has had a stellar sports car career. He actually did win this event once overall and then got DQ'd. Chris.
GT1 leading car, 63 into pit lane, and Antonio Garcia getting back behind the wheel. If you've been watching for the past couple hours, you're probably wondering why Antonio would be getting behind the wheel, because you'd be thinking that Jan Magnussen would be up after Johnny O'Connell. But the problem is, Jan Magnussen got sick at about 1 o'clock this morning, started throwing up after his last stint, so it looks like his day is probably done, and Johnny O'Connell and Antonio Garcia are going to have to carry the weight of leading GT1 for the rest of this race. Not as hard a day as probably Charles Wolfsman and Andre Lotterer have had, but these guys obviously going to have to be working pretty hard from 1 o'clock this morning until 3 o'clock this afternoon. But Antonio Garcia, after that last stint, looked pretty fresh, so I think he's going to be fine. But Johnny O'Connell only did one stint there and kind of was limping as he walked out of the car. So as soon as he gets his helmet off, we'll check in with Johnny and make sure he still is fresh enough to finish this race.
I hope they're pulling those tires down gently there. Of course,
yeah, you don't want to get in trouble.
Well, while we were watching closely that pit stop of Corvette Racing, Tom Christensen just had a very nervous moment with the 99 JMB Racing Ferrari, and it was, I'm going this way, I'm going this way, no, I'm going this way, no, I'm going this way, and the Ferrari second guessing and the Audi second guessing, and it was a very close call as the 7 Peugeot was back in.
Well, it's obviously Tom Christensen's driving very hard right now, so you saw that in that. Here the 7 getting worked on. It's the lone Audi hope. And Tom behind the wheel, they'll have him running hard laps.
This car currently 9th overall and in LMP1. The top 10 cars on the racetrack are all LMP1s. The best P2 is 11th. The best GT1 is 13th. And speaking GT1, Johnny O'Connell is standing by.
Well, Johnny, you guys have obviously got a lot of weight to carry with Jan being sick now. How tough is this last half of the race going to be?
Yeah, I'm praying he gets healthy. There's a whole lot of Danish people here that and a redhead that would like to see him get healthy. It's hard, you know. I did it once before when Ron got sick, and it's just difficult because I've only had an hour's sleep so far. So, you know, you got to get your body worked on. So I'll go back, get tuned up a little bit. But it is really hard work, and the guys in the 4 car, you know, I think their car might be working a little bit better, and they're pushing.
When you got out of the car, you know, you've always got a little bit of a swagger in your step as you move through the paddock, but your swagger looked a little slow there.
That was a waddle. No, you know what, your right leg just gets destroyed here. You know, my knee's hurting, my foot's hurting, so, you know, you're braking so hard and so aggressively. People think that's because it's a long lap. You're not working hard, man. You work harder here than anywhere. So you know, it's a workout, but, you know, we got some good people to take care of us. We'll just go get tuned up.
All right, man, go get rested.
Yeah, these racing shoes have a very thin sole, so you can feel the pedals. And I tell you what, when you push that brake pedal for a long time, lap after lap after lap, it certainly does start to make your foot feel very sore.
Well, you get a rock bruise on your foot is what it's like. And boy, every time you get on that brake pedal, it makes you want to cry. It's a soft part of your foot. A lot of brake pressure involved with these cars, too. Much more than a street level brake would be.
So just to regroup, just to give you the rundown, Brabham has a 1 minute 36 second lead over the sister car, the 8 of Stefan Saras, and Tom Christensen a lap back on 287. Then it's the first gasoline-powered car. It is the ProDrive Lola Aston Martin of Thomas Enger in 4th. Then the Orica. We haven't seen a lot of it. We haven't spoken a lot of it. But Sohaila Yari is doing a great job. And for Hugues de Schonack to be up there fighting with Aston Martin and to be in the top 5 overall, that's a little bit of sugar. That's a sweetener in this deal what he feels a little bit bitter about with the ACO rules and regulations, diesel versus petrol, wants them addressed for next year. In 6th place, the 14 Audi of Charles Walsman, one of 2 R10s for Collis, and right on cue, here it is. And then Nicholas Prost in the Speedy Team Racing Subaru, and then the Sol Pescarolo Brusciani in 8th. Clean, Christian Clean in that number 7 Peugeot we've just seen serviced and sent. And then finally in the 10th, Christian Baccarud in the 2nd Collis car. So that's where we stand at the moment. However, the most interesting margin and gap to watch is from 1st to 2nd. What is going to happen? What will transpire between the sister Peugeots? Here is the race leading car.
See Brab's getting out. He's finished with his stint now. That's Alexander Wirtz getting in. Everything looking pretty normal so far, but we've seen this before too.
Somebody doing something in there.
I'm here. Do see the crew member, as you said, Dorsey, leaning over, working on something in the cockpit. I'm trying to determine whether it's just a drink bottle or what. Tires going on right now. Closes the door, and there is a drink bottle laying out, so I've got to believe that perhaps just changed the drink bottle, and they'll get him back underway. So right now, the 9 car sitting here. Oh, there's been a driver change. I'm sorry, I wasn't here right when the car got here, but looks like a routine stop, although he stalls it on the way out. This car, just to stay with my theme of body work, one safety screen intact on the left rear, the right rear is missing.
But it is a French car.
So, looking good. Nice and strong. 1-2, Peugeot, Audi. Just when it's a characteristic of this race each and every year, you settle into a rhythm where you think it's predictable, and then something changes in an instant. This is the 8 of Stefan Sarrazin. And you know that the 7 has just been sent. Will they see each other on track shortly? Because that margin will evaporate very quickly. That's Sohail Yari in the lead Orica with the AIM power plant. And this is year 2 of Deschonac's 3-year plan. They are winners here at Le Mans in class. It is a first-class operation. How high can they get today? We're back at Le Mans. Great to have you with us. And the number 1 Audi, the only Audi that can take the fight to Peugeots, is back on track after an extended time in the pit box. What's going on here between both Aston Martins, the GT2 and P1? It was a close call, simple as that. We'll come back to the Audi story in just a moment because it wasn't anything urgent. It was just a lack of time. But let's hear from the race leader.
David Brabham just climbed out of the number 9 Peugeot. David, we a great pace out there. I talked to Frank Montagny when he got out of the car. He alluded to the fact that maybe you guys running a little faster than the pace he had thought he was set for you guys. And I asked him if you'd be able to race later, and he said, I think that's already been decided. Will you be able to race later? You had a wry smile when I asked you that earlier.
Well, that's a good question, isn't it? Well, to be honest, we've got to look after the car all the way to the end. We don't know what's going to happen towards the end. We may have to race, we may not. It depends a lot on Audi.
Depends a lot on Audi, or does it depend a lot on Olivier Canel?
Well, I suppose both, yeah.
All right, mate. Good job.
In good spirits.
Laconic Aussie.
Yeah, he's in good spirits, isn't he? It's been a very good run. Just getting back to that Audi story as we welcome Calvin Fish back to the booth. We've dragged him from his slumber, shaken him from his slumber. And Cal, take that Audi story.
Well, once again, Tom Christensen, as he completed his stint there, the car was wheeled back into the garage to have all of those intercoolers blown out. So this has been a concern throughout the course of this race. And they certainly want to chase down those Peugeots, but they're looking at those numbers and looking at the telemetry and realizing that they're getting in the danger zone. So they have no option but to spend about probably 60 seconds or so inside the garage, clearing those intercoolers out. But when you're playing catch-up and you keep losing time like that, David, it's really a tough road ahead of you.
I think the Peugeot has got that really slick screen thing, like Dorsey Schrader was talking about earlier on, which is like the air conditioning at your home when you got those sliding shields that keep the grit and the muck and the rubber out. We heard Alan McNish saying earlier on he thought there was more dust and grit around this year than other years for some reason. I don't know why, I'm not quite sure, but maybe the tires this year are wearing at a different rate and a different way, and they're making a different sort of grain of rubber, and it gets jammed into that radiator matrix, and of course at that point you're doomed. And if you've got a shield there you can see that rolled up rubber right there, big chunks of it. It sticks to itself there, all at the side of the track there, really piling up, and that stuff gets in the radiators. And of course with the intercooled cars, with the turbocharged cars, the intercooler is very important that they don't get blocked up, otherwise the charge going into the engine is so hot that the engine loses performance drastically, and of course gets even hotter.
Yeah, and Dindo said when he finished his stint earlier today, he said there's an inconsistency with the power. He said the temperature really has a dramatic effect. You're not really knowing lap to lap what sort of performance you're going to get out of the car, which is really surprising that it has that much effect immediately on the race car.
We heard Johnny O'Connell say earlier in his interview after his stint, I think the 64 have sorted out their problems and they're starting to push. Folks, there's only 10 seconds between these cars now. That's what we're seeing on screen. There's the margin between the sister cars, the 63 and 64. This race is far from over for GT1. Fabulous stuff.
Well, we understand the 64 got a little bit of aero damage underneath the front end, which was causing some concern. But they've obviously decided to keep pounding around because they can't afford time in the garage either if they're going to chase down that 63 car. But what a fascinating battle we're seeing here today between the two factory Corvettes as they try and go out with their swan song on top. Once again, they've won this race 5 times over the years, but they haven't won in a couple of years. The ProDrive Astons have been on top in 07 and 08. This year, ProDrive are not here. Corvette have certainly laid a really fast pace down during the course of this first 17 hours.
All Mazda prototypes still running, which is a fabulous performance because one of the storylines coming into this week's race was the little niggly engine problems that the Mazda had experienced, not only in the American Le Mans Series, but in the European Le Mans Series as well. So that's a great sign. It's a great comeback sign.
It really is. You may have got the same text, Lee, but John Doonan texted me and said, we're still running, boys, all 4 of them. And that puts a big smile on his face because, you know, they don't want to let the side down. They realize that these teams really have a huge investment, and they really seem to have straightened out some of the problems they had, and just great to see the cars running well. This is the RML car, which is the lead Mazda-powered machine in the category right now. It's running in the 4th position currently.
Incidentally, up front, we say that there's only 10 seconds between the two GT1 Corvettes. Up front, there's only 16 seconds between Wirtz and Sarrazin. Will the Peugeots be allowed to race each other for the overall win of this event?
Well, the other key is when you back time the race, who will need that last pit stop? Are they on the same sequence in terms of how many stops they need to get to the checkered flag this afternoon?
I mean, if I was management, this is one of those things where these teams need managing, and you know, you can't just let these lads go at it hammer and tongs when you're looking at the winning of the Le Mans 24 hour, and that McNish Audi is just lurking only a lap back. I mean, you just can't let these guys go duking it out when you've still got nearly 5.5 hours left to go yet.
Well, when we spoke to David Braben there just a few minutes ago, he was smiling, and I think if there weren't team orders in place, he would have a look of concern knowing that that lead is being eroded so quickly.
I mean, sometimes these things are decided early on in the race by the luck of the draw, the way things go, the way traffic went. It got left out in the lurch with the first caution period. It got left behind the wrong pace car. You know, they have 2 pace cars here, and they got down. Then they got up in front again when the 8 car had some trouble. So that's the way the way the cookie crumbles, you know. And you can't just go, well, I'm not satisfied with that, so I'm going to take the lead back.
And I think the fact that the Audi is having problems in terms of having to keep pushing the car back into the garage every 3 or 4 hours and cleaning out those intercoolers is taking the pressure off Peugeot to the point that they may instill some team orders, recognizing that no one's really going to catch us if we just maintain station here and keep clicking off the laps.
It's a 2-lap margin now between Sarrazin in second and McNish in third. However, keep in mind that Sarrazin is due in. Sarrazin will be pitting soon, so that will kind of balance things out. However, we do know that the Audi is slightly behind, more behind than what it was earlier. So this car is due to stop soon.
Now the position is reversed. Just a few laps ago, when David was in the car, their car, the 9 car was lapping in the 32s, 33, and the 8 car was lapping in the 28 range, and it's completely reversed now. Vert's last lap was a 3:28. This car's last lap was a 3:33. So about 5 seconds a lap slower on that lap. So that, of course, that seesaws with the traffic.
Behind the top 3, Jan Charuz in the Aston Martin Lola has a 3-lap advantage over Olivier Panis in the lead Oreca. Charles Walsman is then 2 laps further behind Panis, and Bruce Chouani is less than a minute and a half in his Pescarolo behind the Collis Audi.
And then, of course, the third Peugeot, the number 7 car, which got off to such a terrible start, is lurking behind the Prost car and going significantly quicker. And I would imagine that the 7 car will eventually end up in about 6th.
Well, we've been talking a lot about Audi and these problems that continue to go on. It's none better than get it from the horse's mouth, the man who's just stepped from the car. Hi, Tom Christensen. You've got Lee Diffie, Calvin Fish and David Hobbs here. Tell us about your last stint, mate. You were running well, but again, that prolonged period in the pit box. Tell us what's happening.
Hey, David. Hey, Calvin. And everyone else out there. The car's running well. The car's running beautifully. But unfortunately, we keep having issues with high air intake temperatures for the turbocharger. And this keeps us slowing down on the straights. We've had it since, I think, 9 or 10 last night. And once in a while, we have to get the car back in the box to keep it under control. And it also means that we sort of trails the straight line speed. We have to run with a little bit slower map in that sense, and that's not really what the driver wants. The car is good, but when you lose 5 or 6 seconds a lap just on the straights, then it's a little bit of a challenge, isn't it?
It's a heck of a challenge. When you're slow on the straight at Le Mans, I mean, you are slow, and there's just nothing you can do about it, right?
Yeah, you can brake a little bit later. That's the only positive. But apart from that, the race it's still long. And apart from that, the car's running well, I said. But obviously, maybe it's not enough to put enough pressure on the 2 Pios.
Tom, you predicted with the green racetrack that you would experience some understeer at the beginning of the race. We understand that was the balance on all 3 of the Audis. How much did the lack of dry testing and practice time without the pre-test really hurt your setup with the car this weekend?
Yeah, but I mean, a great crew like Team Joest is, we have dialed it in, but for sure it hurts. It definitely hurts. There's no doubt about that. But we have dialed the car in, so the car's running really good now. But it have required a few nose changes and a little bit of a, I would say, challenging experience on the tire pressures as well. But the car is running well now, and we have a good balance. But the straight line speed is just not there. And now it's obviously now it will be bit back on for Alan again. But I think soon maybe we have to turn it down again and get through the same process where the mechanics obviously getting faster and faster doing that. But if it's enough to put pressure on them, I don't know. But it's still a long way to go. There's still a few Formula 1 races left in the miles we have to do before 3 o'clock.
Well, Tom, we'll let you go. We appreciate you joining us. Go and get a drink and some food and some rest. Well done. And the R8, the R10 won on debut. This one's not over, so we'll cross our fingers for you.
Definitely not. Thank you.
5 hours, 34 minutes remaining in the 77th running of the 24 Hours of Le Mans. What are the spirits like in the Peugeot camp? Is confidence growing with every hour that goes by? You would think so. With blistering lap times, Alex Wurz is now growing that lead advantage over the sister Peugeot. It's out to nearly 30 seconds now. He's continually lapping in the high 20s and low 30s. And what has gone on here? Oh, Was that the Risi Ferrari?
It's down into Mulsanne hairpin.
Boy, that is some brake lockup at this stage of the race.
Yeah, I tell you what, I'd have to suggest there's a flat spot on that car right now, which will need to be changed. And they have a healthy lead. So Pierre Caffer behind the wheel right now. And they may make the call here to take a look at those tires.
That would be a very big flat spot, I think, after a long slide like that.
Things looking good, though, for the Houston-based Risi Ferrari. They'll come in, get it checked. We'll tell you more about it when we come back. We welcome you back with a Valvoline race recap. And the number 9 Peugeot has led for the last 13 hours. But let's show you what has transpired in between now and then being the start. It was looking good for Peugeot from the start. It was not for the third Audi of Alex Premar. A very scary moment. Talk about scary and close calls. Bang. Jean-Christophe Bouillon into Pedro Lamy. And Henri Pescarolo not pleased with the Works Audi Lollipop Man, saying should not have released that car into his. Alan McNish, damage on the front of the R15. And he told us later it was a collision with another prototype, just rammed right in behind it, and the Porsche curbs not quite sure what was going on. This was a scary moment, Cal.
It was. Stuart Hall there getting into Tim Greaves in the Radical. And later on, a couple of hours later, the ACO made the call to make sure that Stuart Hall didn't see any further action in this race today, parked him.
It was a hit and miss day for Flying Lizard. They are now retired. This wasn't the reason, though. They did have a puncture, and the car was crashed. While leading, the 8 Peugeot, Sebastien Bourdais aboard. They had some transmission issues, and this cost them the lead of the motor race. It was a lengthy pit stop, some 35 minutes, and then they were sent. This car is now in second place.
This was a big moment entering the Porsche curves. Lucas Luhr loses control of the number 2 Audi. Massive impact with the rear of the car. Later on, he said, I don't think there was anything wrong with the car, but he said the car stepped out on him on the entry to the corner, something that hadn't done for the whole race. And Mike Rockenfeller backed up that remark, saying the car had been very stable until that point.
We fast forward to hour 11. Terrific scrap for second place between Alan McNish, that's the car you can see up ahead, and we ride with Stefan Saras, and Alan was relentless.
And here's what we've been seeing throughout the course of this race. Every 3 or 4 hours, the Audi has to be pushed back into the garage and have those intercoolers blown out.
The Speedy Racing Team Sabar number 13 LMP1 prototype gave the Corvette a scare. And speaking of a scare, Benoit Trollier. This was not good. It was a very heavy accident into the S's. And look at that 908 Peugeot just destroyed. Fortunately, Benoit is okay. The 97, the Pirelli shod 430 with a hairy moment, running strong in GT2. However, it's all about the 9. Wirtz, Brabham, Genet have dominated this race.
They've now got their lead back to 1.5 minutes. It was down to half a minute not so long ago, because the Sarrazin car has stopped in the meantime. But Alex Wirtz is now going quicker than Sarrazin. He's doing 28s to Sarrazin's 31, so maintaining that lead.
And there we see the comparison between this year and last. We're 1 lap down at the 18-hour mark, but the last part of that race was in the rain, so there's a good chance that we can overhaul that. The reason we're not in front of it with a dry race is the amount of caution that we've seen here today.
Can't believe that while they had that long caution in the night, they didn't pull that car to a safer spot. That is right to the side of the main straight.
Absolutely.
And we've seen cars squeezing through as they overtake. You know, for instance, the Peugeots will be lapping past the GT1 car about 20 mile an hour quicker right at that point.
Well, just the tyre failure alone, we've seen many tyre failures, as you'll see over the course of 24 hours, and the very sharp gravel that is around this place, and contact between the cars, the debris that causes these punches. All you need is for that to happen at the wrong time, and you're right into the back of that Porsche sitting there.
Well, it would be disastrous.
It's kind of crazy in a way. You have all these safety regulations, and they try and slow the cars down
for
and
hours
and
hours and hours.
This is the Cruz Schiller Mazda P2 prototype. And just underscoring what Le Mans is all about, and that is just the never say die approach because their race pretty much started in the pit box. But they're not giving up to another Mazda-powered P2 prototype for Ray Malek Limited. Still charging on. They know what it takes to win this class here at Les Avs. And the 25 is currently 4th in class with Tommy Erdos. It's 3 laps behind the 33 Speedy Racing Team Subaru entry.
Well, they know what it takes to win, this team. They won here in 05 and 06 with Mike Newton and Tommy Erdos behind the wheel with different teammates, of course. Chris Dyson drafted in this year for his 2nd appearance at Le Mans. Raced with Jan Lammers a few years ago, but just done a great job here. We had a chance to sit down with the team during scrutineering this week, and said it's been a difficult start to the year, but we feel we've turned the corner. Oh, massive impact. One of the Astons, it looks like. Oh, boy.
Oh, boy, that's
huge. And they've had some problems in their testing.
Is that the 007?
If that is the 007, that is the 4th place car in this race, Jan Charouz.
Wow. That is a big hit.
Is that the entrance to the Porsche curves, Dave?
Understandably.
From that strange camera angle. No.
It is. I think it is.
Understandably, the team concerned. This is a huge impact and another safety car intervention, and rightly so.
And again, with the safety car here at Le Mans, because of the length of the lap, 2 safety cars are dispatched at the same time. One from pit lane, one from Mulsanne corner. There you see Dave Richards, team principal with ProDrive, and the Aston Martin racing boss here this weekend. Of course, with these type of situations, the main concern is, how is the driver? That is a big hit, though, David.
Very big, because if that is up the end, that's where Lucas Luhr went off earlier on. He luckily spun around and backed into the guardrail. It looks like the Aston might have gone in head first. And it depends how far you go across that gravel trap and how much speed you lose before you get there. We obviously don't seem to have a replay of what actually happened, but that is very disappointing for the team. And of course, we all certainly hope that the driver is okay.
Well, Jan Charouz had a big crash earlier this weekend on Thursday night. So if indeed this is Jan in the car, one of the winners from the opening round of LMS this year, got this prototype ProDrive Aston Martin program off to the right start. However, these high-speed crashes, unfortunately, are becoming all too common with this Lola Aston Martin. Charouz had one on Thursday night. You back up, Calvin mentioned it earlier, testing at Monza, and Jos Verstappen completely destroyed one of the cars in testing going through the Parabolica. We will work on getting to the bottom of this situation.
Looking at a replay here of when the marshals initially got on the scene. That's great. That's big news.
That is big news. That is really good.
To Brian Till.
31, your race-leading P2 car is in. Casper Elgaard getting out. Emmanuel Collard getting in. Now, this is a team with varied experience levels. Remember, Collard has a victory here in 2003 in GT2. This will be his 15th appearance. Casper Elgaard, this will be his 6th. And for young Poulsen, Christian Poulsen, he is a rookie, so to win in his rookie appearance would be quite a feather in his cap. We talked earlier about Porsche not bringing a factory effort in the RS Spider here several years ago when the car debuted, but right now it is run like clockwork, and the 31 continues to lead P2.
Well, and that may very well be the difference between those top 2 cars in P2. Emmanuel Collard and Casper Elgaard lead the Le Mans Series. They know what it's all about. They know what to be at the front. And Essex has worked with that Porsche RS Spider for a couple of years. For Navi Team Go, they have not. They're learning that Porsche RS Spider on the go. Concern at the ProDrive Aston Martin camp.
You can see it in their faces, Lee. I mean, when you see such a huge crash as that, you know, the thumbs up may have been that the driver's alert, but, you know, he's not out of the car yet, so... Well, now we see the car being drugged. We'd have to assume the driver has been.
It's the 009. It's not Jan Charouz at all. It is the 009. and that is Harold Primet behind the wheel. This is the car that has spent an incredible amount of time in the Aston Martin ProDrive pit box. A very troublesome race in 2009 for the 009.
Yeah, I mean, it's currently way down. In 26th spot overall.
His first race with the team. He's had 4 starts here at Le Mans. Best result is 7th last year with the Pescarolo team. And all of the leaders now will take advantage of this caution period to get some servicing done.
Second place car on pit road came in some 2 minutes 17 seconds behind leader Wirtz, but of course all that is irrelevant now that we're under another safety car period.
The big thing here is you have a lot of time to work with. You really need to stay within the same half lap with the 2 pace cars. There used to be a rule in place. You had 3 pace cars and you had to drop to the next segment of the race. So imagine you got the 3 pace cars creating 3 segments around the racetrack. You had to lose a segment once you made a pit stop. Now you can do your pit stop and remain in the same segment of the caution flag period. So it allows you to spend probably around 3 minutes on pit lane without dropping to the next pace car. So if there's any little niggly issues you're thinking about changing, now is the time to do it.
Harold Primet climbing from the cockpit.
Oh, that's great.
Of the Lola Aston Martin and receiving the acknowledgement of the crowd. And whenever you see an impact like that, you get a little worried, but to see the driver climb from the car is a very positive sign.
Modern race cars are a miracle almost. The driver cockpit, the pod that the drivers sit in, whether it's a single-seater or a sports car now, they are incredibly strong. And obviously the tracks are so much safer. There's those big tire barriers, gravel traps, all sorts of runoff area. So you don't hit as many objects as you could before. But that is still an all. When you see a crash of that magnitude, it's great to see the driver get out and just walk away like that, not even a limp.
Wouldn't you like $10 for every time you've gone to a grill out or a dinner party and somebody who's not into our sport says, I don't understand your sport, why do you bother racing? And then you try and explain to them the filter down effect of not only technology but safety aspects that is developed for motor racing that filter down into road cars. Brian?
Right now, Olivier Panis sitting in the Oreca in the garage. Interesting, guys, they had the engine cover off, and what they were doing was working on the rear brakes, left rear suspension and the right rear brake rotor. I didn't see the left brake rotor, but I assume it was off as well. And the thing that I find interesting about that is not at all unusual to see perhaps front brakes being worked on, because those are the ones that get used the most. But the rear brakes, that's a bit odd unless there's been some type of a bias issue or some type of mechanical problem in the system. At any rate, the 11th having a good run until that point, and now back out of the garage and on track.
Well, luckily for him, of course, they did that servicing on the car while the safety car was out, so they lost a lot less time than they would have expected to.
And Panis is released. His second time in the 24 hours of Le Mans. And we will slowly work our way back towards going racing again. Peugeot, Audi. Is it all over for the R15? I don't think so. 5¼ hours still to come. Speed's live coverage of Le Mans continues, and we have received notification this is the last lap under the safety car. We will be going racing after this. And if you've just joined us, the reason for this most recent safety car intervention, a very heavy crash, and thus retirement of the 009 Lola Aston Martin. Harold Primet, the Swiss driver, is okay, but it was a massive crash. Car is done.
Well, during this caution, as you would imagine, a lot of the leaders have hit pit lane. Alan McNish was just in. Routine topped him up with fuel, sent him on his way, and the lead car, the number 9 car, Alexander Wirtz, was in. Tires, fuel, and they also changed the rear bodywork. So Brian Till had been noticing down there that some of the screens had got blown out, so that should take care of that and have that car in good shape regarding the new bodywork regulations, which state the car must be in its normal trim and state by the end of this race.
And there is one of the Peugeots at the back of that line of traffic. So he's going to be very careful picking his way through there.
Bruno Fama to the right there. Now got his back to us, talking to the team and just giving them the game plan. What are we going to do here with just over 5 hours to go?
Hey, speaking of Peugeot, Nicolas Manassian beat his own record that he set earlier in the previous stint with a lap time of a 3-minute 24.35. He is not too far off qualifying time.
He's got to be so frustrated. It's a case of what might have been. And
now that's what they call extreme tyre warming.
That's Christian Bakkerud. What has happened? What has happened?
I'll tell you what can happen here. You can get the brakes too cool. Let's see what happens here. Oh, no.
Oh. I think he just gave it a bit of welly there to try and put some heat in the rear tyres and got it all wrong. Now, that is what you call a mistake. Christian Bakkerud.
I wonder if, David, sometimes you can have them set on like a caution lap setting on the electronics, whether he suddenly hit the button or something, because he suddenly got a burst of power there.
Got a burst of power he was not expecting.
Yeah.
That's for dead sure.
He started to weed the tyres, and it's like suddenly that limiter clicked out or something.
And look at that. Now, that's brought out more debris on the front straight there, on the main straight, which is not a good spot to have it.
Well, we're back racing. That did not stop them from waving the green. Now Bakkerud is heading in the right direction with a very damaged R10.
Yeah, it's not in good shape. You can see the bodywork damage. He must have got suspension damage as well. The way that thing is crabbing.
It's a bit deranged, isn't it?
He's going to leave the top 10 in the race.
He's got a long ways to go too. That's the second chicane there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. He's got
you know,
6 miles to go.
I question going green when that just happened, because he's getting half the field is still yellow.
Green.
Again, we've got 2 pace cars. Looked on the front straightaway like half the field been given the green, and these guys haven't.
The Collis team go to work getting a new front nose assembly ready for Christian Bakkerud. That is not the lead Collis car, incidentally. Charles Walsman is up, bordering on breaking into the top 5.
What a performance by he and his teammate. Incredible stuff. Just 2 guys doing the work there with Karthikeyan's problem. Right before the off, dislocating his shoulder. Just unbelievable bad luck. And here we see Bakkerud just trying to get his way back to pit lane.
I don't think it's just bodywork, do you, Calvin? I mean, it looks...
He hit a ton. Now, this is ugly. Pace car still out there. There's a lot of confusion.
Very, very confusing there. The pace car all rushing by the pace car.
Well, they've released one, and I guess maybe forgot to tell the other.
We're on board with the current leader, Alexander Wurz. And there's a bit of in most series, the teams are given the information via the radio from the chief stewards when they're going to go back to green. But I spoke to Brad Kettler a couple of weeks ago about the safety car procedure, and he said the scary thing is, Calvin, we never know when they're going to go back to green. Suddenly they're flying by the pit lane and they've been released. And we have no official notification of when that's going to happen. They can suddenly turn off the lights, and 10 seconds later you are back at it.
Boy, that's a bit strange, isn't it?
300 laps down. And this 9 car has seen the majority of those as the leader of this race.
This man has seen victory lane before. And there you see that Audi. This is hairy stuff. This is very hairy stuff. Look at that! My goodness, 200 miles an hour plus. Closing rate of speeds, and that faster prototype couldn't see the slow prototype off to the side of the road there. That was very hairy.
And that GT1 car was blocking the view of the prototype that was coming in from behind.
Like we're saying, Calvin, you know, you said earlier on, that car that's parked on the main straight there, so much emphasis has been put on safety. All the rules have been changed this year to slow them down, ostensibly to make them safer. And then you have issues like this pace car fiasco, which is nothing short of what this is, really.
There you see the mixed class. P1 prototypes mixing and blending with the P2s. It shows you the difference in speed. That is the lead P2 right there, the Team Essex car with Emmanuel Collard on board.
That is a great shot there through the Porsche curves. It is really, really quick through there. 4th gear on the entry. 160 miles an hour as they then sweep through that left-hander. And you have to really hit your marks through that part of the racetrack.
Let's take you back and just show you this scary, scary moment. Christian Bakkerud ailing, and look at this group of prototypes and GT cars coming up behind.
You see there, look at that GT car. He suddenly jinks. And I tell you, if that prototype was any closer, that would have been disaster right there.
That was the Drayson Racing GT2 Aston Martin Vantage.
That car has got to go through. Now there's an interesting thing. The 64 car has taken the lead in the GT1.
Johnny Cocker behind the wheel of the 87 machine, making his debut here at Le Mans. He was very excited about being here. Visited 3 years ago just as a spectator and said, I want to be here. And lo and behold, he and Paul Drayson, joined by Marino Franchitti for this weekend, have made it happen.
Yeah, it's the first time the 64 is in the lead of the class. Boy, it's had a strained day, a challenging day. And now it has a half-second margin over the 63 sister Corvette.
When we talk about team orders, they have a healthy lead over another Corvette, one of the Luc Alphon cars. Holds down the third position in class. What will Doug Feehan, the program manager at Corvette Racing, put into play here with just over 5 hours to go? I've seen so many great battles between the two cars, the two Corvettes over the years. I'd love to see them race this one out.
Well, and Doug's always been very open about racing. Just don't hit each other, right?
That's right. Go for it, boys, but don't screw up.
Boy, I tell you what, Bakkerud there just got through the Porsche curves. That must have been pretty hair-raising while he was trying to go through there. Obviously, there's more damage to this car, I think, than just that nose.
We'll give you a gap as soon as we can, first to second. Has been in that minute and a half range for some time. It's a minute 46 as Sarrazin just flashes across the line. Wirtz to Sarrazin, first to second, 1 minute 46. Alan McNish a lap further down on that second place 8 car.
With a lot of work to do, and an ailing car is going to be tough for Alan to really make inroads into those Peugeot's lead. And I think they just have to sit there, keep clicking the laps off, and hope that the Peugeots hit some kind of trouble if they're going to see another victory for Audi here. It's the 40th anniversary of Reinhold Jost at Le Mans, and over the course of those 40 years, he's had 10 victories as team director.
Watch the Collis boys go to work here. How bad is this Audi R10? One of only 2 R10s in the race.
Well, I'm not sure if they saw the pictures we saw, but I'd be wheeling that thing in the garage for a quick look over. You can see there the left rear corner is broken.
I think that
I can't imagine they're just going to throw tires on and send him.
No, they've said it needs to go in on the dolly.
I mean, that should have been, decision should have been made before they even got there.
Justin.
Yeah, I mean, it should have been made before they got there. But, you know, sometimes they have a sequence of these things. I think if anyone mistakes that front end for a light damage, they're very wrong. He must have absolutely punted that in there, guys, because that is quite a sturdy splitter. And you can see all that foam core that makes it, is a composite between the, to make it as tough as it is. And it's just shredded. So obviously going to take it off, and they take off the rear as a matter of course as well. But this is going to be in here probably not as long as we think, because, you know, once they get going on this, the clips just come on and off. But he did come in very slowly, so who knows if there's any other damage. I'll come back to you if I find out more.
Well, certainly this R10 has been proven to be very quickly serviced in these type of scenarios, but this team is not that familiar with this car, so all of these procedures are great. You can have all the components, David, but unless the mechanics have rehearsed this, it's going to take a lot longer.
Well, exactly, and of course they won't have the resources that one of the factory teams does to do that sort of practice, and they won't have the spares available, and so it's going to be interesting. Oh, there's the 3 car. Oh.
Duma, I believe he was in there unless they did a change during this caution. Yeah, it is Duma.
Now, was that down at Indy? Where is that?
That's where his teammate Prema had the problem, because of Sarnage we're looking down at.
Oh dear, this time it... How extraordinary.
What has happened to Romain?
There we see no other cars in the picture, so
just locked it.
There he comes. On board replay. Yeah, similar scenario, David, to Alex in the early laps of the race. However, he cocked it sideways the other way.
Stop. Oh, too late in the gravel.
Again, right at apex, the car took a little bobble there and he lost control. Aero is so important in that corner.
Sebastian Bourdais, will he have a chance of winning the race in his hometown?
That's what worries me slightly, that there'll be a lot of pressure, lobbying going on in that team to let him win this race. He's currently lying second, and that might lead to some dangerous racing.
So Dumas has been rescued, car running, he's okay, and we'll come back to the pit box for a precautionary check. We'll be back 5 hours to go. We know that so many of you are interested in where the American Le Mans Series cars, drivers, teams are. Risi Competizione continues to lead GT2. And boy, is there a scrap in GT1 between the sister Corvettes. The 64 of Olivier Beretta has about a 3.5-second lead over Antonio Garcia. We will follow that one all the way to the end. Hey, speaking of GT2, Patrick Long, ALMS driver, Porsche factory driver, is still in with a shot of a podium. He's running third in his IMSA Performance Matmut Porsche. Cal, have we told the cat on the track story?
Yeah, we did. It was pretty funny when he was talking about the different languages, David, in terms of when you join a team and just the terminology that you use. And we quite often hear the term, instead of pit, we hear the term box. And he said that, you know, when he's working with this French team, he's been in situations where there's been a miscommunication between the crew and the drivers, and he was on the radio in the pit box, and his co-driver was out there, and the driver was saying, engine cut, cut. And he was like recognizing that means that there's running out of fuel. He's going to be pitting, and the team were just hearing cut. And they said, and walked over to Pat and said, hey, laughingly, hey, there's a cat on the track. And he said, what are you talking about? He's saying cut. He needs to get in here. So he's trying to get everyone on the same page, because he said sometimes repeat sounds like we pit. We pit. Sounds like repeat. So he said we try and use terms that are not confusing.
Brian?
Well, guys, Patrick Long struggling right now with a clutch that is not cooperating. Actually, since about 10 o'clock last night, I've had to bleed that clutch about 4 or 5 times. When you guys were in break about 2 hours ago, you watched him creep away from the pit stop, actually crept away on the starter motor, using the starter to both start the engine and move the car along, because he didn't have a clutch during this last full course caution. They did take the time on that pit stop to bleed the clutch, but it seems like something that they have to do about every 2 stints. So while that car running well on the racetrack where they could shift it without the clutch, when they come to pit lane, they've got a real issue.
And Brian, as you mentioned earlier, clutch was an issue for the JMW, the number 92 Ferrari 430 GT. That is the closest car to Pat Long as far as competition for that final step on the podium, and they are on the same lap. So a lot of pressure on Pat Long and his teammates in the IMSA Performance Porsche.
I'll tell you what, that was a great shot of watching these LMP1 cars really flow through the entry to that Porsche curve section, and that's where Lucas Luhr lost it, and we haven't really seen that camera angle very much during the course of the race, and there is a little bit of a bobble there. The car really wiggles around there and gets light on the entry there, which may have caught Lucas out.
Well, that's where the 009 car went off too. So
this is the 8 about to put a lap, attempting to put a lap on Alan McNish and really create that a larger divide and give the total Peugeot Audi team more insurance and more room to breathe easy.
Again, you just want that cushion, and if they can get 2 of their cars 2 laps up on the Audi, that changes the face of the race also.
Certainly takes a lot of pressure off them, because as you and I were saying just a few moments ago, it's not going to take much of a slip at this stage, and they'll be all over them like a cheap suit. So they got to really keep hammering on. The drivers have got to concentrate.
That's Harold Premay after that very, very heavy accident in the 009 Aston Martin, acknowledging the fans, and is able to walk himself back to the pit box.
Where have they taken him to? I mean, he's miles away down there.
He was in the ambulance last time we saw him.
Why didn't they just take him back to the... They released him down at Arnage, which is 6 miles from home.
There's the margin between Alan McNish and going down another lap.
Well, we know that the 8-car Sarrazin is going to be pushing. He should be able to haul in Alan McNish. We spoke to Tom Christensen just a few minutes ago, and he talked about this Audi. As soon as it starts to get the higher temperatures, it loses straightaway speed. So Alan will probably be an easy target for the healthy Sarrazin on board here with the 8-car through that second chicane, the Michelin chicane. But we're talking about the pace, David, of the Peugeots. I think with just under 5 hours to go, they need to keep pushing, because if you bag it off too much and then you have any sort of problem, that 2-lap margin can go away from you quickly.
Absolutely.
So if they could stretch it out, get maybe another half lap on the Audi over the course of the next couple of 3 hours, then if they have a problem, it just increases that margin that you have.
I mean, God forbid, for instance, if you have a flat tyre, like just going through Tertre Rouge, and you got another 7 miles to go with a flat tyre, I mean, that 2-lap margin could just go in a heartbeat.
I think when you get down to 2 to 3 hours to go, they can change the strategy again. But right now, it seems like they're letting their drivers run at a similar pace to the Audi, 328s, that sort of range.
Dramas here for the 430 Ferrari, the JMB Racing machine. It is not at full racing speed.
Way off the pace, isn't he?
He's weaving around a little bit there too. Maybe he's got not a flat tire, but a slow puncher here, and doesn't have the, I believe that's Christophe Bouchou behind the wheel, looking at the helmet.
We made the point earlier in the show, in this amazing history of Audi at Le Mans, their cars, the R8 and the R10, both won on debut. There's a long time to go, 4 hours, 51 minutes. But for them to achieve that same wonderful accomplishment with the R15 in its first time here at Le Saff, something incredible is going to need to happen.
Well, you know one guy who's going to be at 100% for this last period of the race is this man, Alan McNish. He's not going to give up. He's got a heart the size of a lion.
Well, as Tom Christensen said just not so long ago, you know, we've got a lot of Grand Prix left. I mean, this is, you know, with 4 hours and 50 minutes left, they certainly won't be giving up. That's for dead sure.
328.1 last lap through for Alan McNish. Leader Wirtz ran a 329.5. Sarrazin a 331.0 in traffic. And you could see Alan McNish using a bit more of the road than he typically would through the Ford.
Well, he's trying a lot
there.
harder now. I mean, for him to do a 328, that's only 2 seconds slower than the car's fastest lap in the whole race. So he's obviously responded. He does not want the 8 car putting him a lap down. He doesn't want both Peugeots to be 2 laps in front of him.
It was a far improved performance this year, isn't it, from the Works Peugeot team. First, second, and ninth. Very healthy up against the Audis of second. The 3 is lost and the 2 Audi is out as of 6.5 hours into the race. There's a mini team brief, a mini team meeting going on at Audi, Team Audi Yost headquarters.
Understood.
Hey, let's talk GT2. Excuse me, David. Jamie Mello standing by with our Justin Bell.
Jamie, I think at the moment your car is an exercise, an example in how if you're disciplined about your pace, you don't make mistakes, you can stay at the front.
Yeah, that's one of the key for this kind of race, and to have an easy car to drive, and so that's make our job easy as well. So team has done a good job as well. Pit stop, it's really good pit stop, and yeah, we need to just keep the car on the track, especially now the track is getting dirty, and some part of the track it's oil as well, so you need to be really careful on this at this part of the race. So it's still a few hours to go, I think 5 hours to go, so we need just to keep the car on the track, and I'm sure Mick and Pierre they will do a good job.
Well, they certainly know what they should be doing. Now, when you're out there, you can take care of your race, but you can't take care of the prototypes and where they pass you and the speed that they pass you. Did you have any excitement during the night?
Yeah, you can try to. You need to be really careful on the mirrors. And what I normally do is, before I'm going in the corner, I have a quick look on the mirror and going out of the corner as well. So it's really difficult because the speed difference is quite a lot. So I think it's about 60 k's. So we need to be really careful about it.
Well, You just keep doing this, and 5 hours should go quickly. Well done, Jamie. Thank you, guys.
Looking good for back-to-back wins here at the 24 Hours in Le Mans.
What a year they've had, Lee. They won here last year, the 24 Hours, went on to win Petit, won Sebring, and on course here to win this one as well. It's a stellar record in the endurance races, and haven't had the best of success in the sprint races this year.
Not so. A couple of years back, they were ALMS GT2 champions. Giuseppe Risi has done something special, and with the selection with Ferrari in Italy, combining Mika Salo, Jamie Mello, of course, now this year in the American Le Mans Series, Pierre Caffa is the full-time driver alongside the Italian-based Brazilian Jamie Mello, who we just heard from. We're back, and the JMB Ferrari is back in its box. Just as we went to that last commercial break, Christophe Bouchou, one of the 3 men, a part of that successful campaign for Peugeot back in 1993, saw this happen.
Well, we'd seen him slow and the car didn't look stable. We suspected a slow puncture, David, but I think what had happened, the wheel had come loose, then it caused the tire to go down and shred, and then finally the wheel fell off going through Arnage there.
It was really bizarre, because when we first saw it and it was going slowly, you couldn't see anything wrong with it at all. In particular, we just surmised it was a flat tire.
Brian's there.
Guys, they had been complaining, or Bouchou had complained of a vibration. So, Calvin, I agree with you. I think the wheel nut probably was not either seated well, or the keepers were not locked in place, and the wheel nut began to back off. That's what began to cause the vibration. Eventually, that cut the tire, and then once the wheel nut departed completely, obviously the wheel came off. But when the car came in, I did get a look. No cross thread going on, or at least no stripped threads on the spindle itself. But I did notice some wear on the spindle up near the hub, which is somewhat unique. The idea of putting just another wheel back on without changing the spindle or that upright would be surprising to me, because the keepers in that spindle I did not see. They pop up once the wheel nut is on, keep that wheel nut from backing off. And indeed, it looks like the crew is going to go to work and they'll effect some type of a change back there. They're going to have to at least do something to get keepers back on that spindle. Otherwise, you'll have the exact same problem next time out.
Yeah, I mean, safety is the key. You don't want to send the guys back out there with the wheel that's going to come loose around this place. You have to make sure that everything's going to be okay. They can take a couple of exploratory laps and feel it out, but wheels coming loose at Le Mans is not a recipe for good things to happen.
No. This is not the best place for wheels to come off.
I meant to update you earlier that this car here with Emmanuel Collard behind the steering wheel is now in the top 10 overall. That's a mighty effort for the P2 car up against the depth of this P1 field this year. 20 LMP1 prototypes, which is just so refreshing to see so many in the Premier class. And now finally a P2 car has broken into the top 10 courtesy of the mistake by Christian Bakkerud. Can't wait to hear and get to the bottom of what exactly happened with that Collis Audi. But Emmanuel has won here in the GT2 class. Is he on his way to his first prototype win? For those of you just joining us, let's bring you up to date with what has occurred since the sun came up, thanks to Valvoline. It's always a welcome sight at Le Sarthe. This not such a welcome sight for the 97 BMS Scuderia Italia car. It's currently second in GT2, but it was a rather innocent affair. Clutch Jarmas for the 92, also fighting for a podium and still very much is so. It's currently in fourth. Dramas here for Neil Yarnikal.
Yeah, quick spin there coming through the first set of chicanes. Got it beat, lost a little bit of time, but no damage to the race car. This was the big one. This was the big one, entering the Porsche curves. Harold Prima, just a massive impact day over, certainly, but the good news was he walked away.
That is very good news, because as you can see, that car was heavily damaged, because that is a very high-speed place to go off. And just look at this here. On the pace car, somehow, Christian Bakkerud, well, we keep speculating as to what went wrong there, but he took that into the guardrail with a heck of a belt. And look at this, just limping home. The pace car's pulled off. Whoa! Ooh. GT1 car there, just getting around it.
And new leader in GT1, Patience. patience has finally paid off for the 64. Ahead of the 63 now, but not by much. Half a second is that margin. There's our second place P2 car. Sasha Masson is steering it and trying to bridge that gap to the Essex car, but there's, what is it now? There's a 2-lap margin between those guys. Hey, wreck, there were plenty of wrecks there. Don't forget, wrecked each and every Thursday night here on Speed at 10 p.m. Eastern. Look at this. I said half a second. It's about a car length now. This is fabulous stuff in GT1.
Here comes Antonio Garcia. He's used to the top step of the podium, as he said. He is putting the pressure on Olivier Beretta.
Olivier Beretta, very experienced, very cool customer though, but obviously a lot of discipline these guys are going to have to show. Long way to go yet. 4.5 hours, just over 4.5 hours, so we can't be going off running into each other.
Thing about Mike West, the crew chief of the 64, he took over that car from Ray Gongler. This is only his second Le Mans as crew chief, very experienced crewman within Corvette racing, but as crew chief on the 64, it's only his second time. And for Danny Binks, highly experienced, he's always been on the wrong car, right, Cal, as far as the winning car?
That's right. I mean, Corvette have had so much success here, and Dan has always been part of the winning group, but never leading the winning car. So he wants these two positions to reverse. He doesn't want to come home second best again. The black car being engineered by Ben Brady, new engineer on that car, and King Flory leads the charge with the yellow machine in terms of engineering and getting the most out of those Corvettes. And it's just a great team. They really work well together, but still maintain the competitive element between the two cars.
When we were at scrutineering earlier in the week on Monday and Tuesday at Place de Jacobin, it's just a fabulous scene in the center of Le Mans. And despite the rain, the crowds were enormous. And just like it is the case every year at Le Mans, it wouldn't be the same without Mr. Le Mans, Tom Christensen. Well, it's very much that case for Corvette. You should see the crowd reaction to these drivers and these cars. It's now ingrained in the fabric of this event that Corvette are here each and every year.
Truly remarkable. I mean, you know, a lot of people question why are GM here with the situation with their manufacturing of production vehicles over in the States. Why are they spending money? Well, the marketing has to continue. Corvette are going to stick around. They've got to sell cars globally, and this is just a tremendous advertisement. Oh, look at that. You see the 64 pits, and Garcia trying to get it slowed down for the chicane. Had a faster prototype to the inside. Nearly lost the 63 machine under braking there. Looked like he may have clipped the curb, unsettled the race car, kept it together though, and that is the key.
I don't think he saw that prototype coming. I think he was distracted there when the black 64 car pulled off, and it just unsettled him a little bit, and that prototype was whistling down the inside. So that was a bit of a close call there.
Did he have some indecision as well? Was he leaving his decision late to maybe dive into the pits and follow the 64? Were they going to be back to back, or were they purposely separating them? Justin.
I actually think you're spot on there. I think they purposely separated them. The team were not ready for him. Not one member of the Corvette pit crew came out until he was about 100 feet away. So they were all taken by surprise that he was coming in, and I'm sure that their strategist just made a last-minute call. They love close racing, as you know, but they don't like it that close. So it's a standard pit stop, and these guys are all ready to go. They were asleep about 32 seconds ago, and now they're doing their job. So, yeah, I think it was just a case of come in now rather than regret it later.
Look how they orchestrate this pit stop, so you're left with two wheels there, but two men got to run back, and they each take one. Just fabulous stuff, the way they've rehearsed and evaluated all of the different ways that the teams over in Europe have been doing it for the first two races of the Le Mans series. They've learned from that and come up with a great way. Here we see the replay. You see the black car peel off, and there you see Antonio Garcia, the faster prototype to the inside. He's very close to the curb and just started to lose the rear end, started to walk on him.
He basically followed the black car. It looked like he was going to follow it in, didn't he? And
all right, that'll settle down. Cross your fingers and let's hope the World Feed Director shows us this in a lapse time when the 63 comes in for servicing. Meanwhile, let's switch back to GT2. Remember the Ferrari of Christophe Bouchou had troubles? Brian tells us more.
Well, Lee, I found a rear hub assembly for a Ferrari F430 down here, and take a look. The wheel slides on. You see these pins. They go in the back of the wheel. That keeps everything stationary, and then the wheel nut goes over it. Here are the threads. But these are the keepers that I was talking about. You can see how they're spring-loaded. Once the wheel nut goes on, these keepers pop up, keep the wheel nut from backing back out. Now, if these don't work, as the car goes down the racetrack, it can slowly loosen up and begin to back out. Or if the wheel nut wasn't put on fully, these will never have a chance to deploy, and that's how that wheel nut comes off. When I looked at the 99, all the threads were intact, but the spindle was scored back here in the back, and that's why I think they're going to need to effect some type of repair, perhaps replace this entire assembly, or at least somehow replace the hub assembly here to make that left rear safe on the 99.
Hey, Brian, while we got you on the line, great show and tell.
Yeah, Lee, go ahead.
Great show and tell. You know we love you like a brother, but I don't think you could ever be a hand model.
Stubby little fingers, yeah, I know.
So, here comes Garcia. What a resume he is building. This incredibly quick Spanish driver. Le Mans GT1 winner last year. Rolex 24 at Daytona winner this year. Is he heading for another one to add to his Sebring 12-hour title as well? And now the pressure swings to Danny Binks' men on the 63 side.
And this lap is critical too, Lee. If he can lay down a really, really fast lap, I don't think he got much traffic on this lap, so we'll have to see how the 64 car does on its out lap. But if Antonio can lay the hammer down, Binksy and the boys put together a good pit stop, maybe they will leapfrog when they hit pit lane the next time. He stays out for more laps, so they're a little bit split on their sequence of the pit stop itself. But he is really laying the hammer down. He did a 3:59 on the last lap when he was in tandem with Beretta. And we'll see what he flashes by this time. 3:56.
As the Creation Auto Sportive heads back into its box, I want to update you with times, so paint the picture a little better. Wirtz has a 1-minute 51-second lead over Sarrazin. Peugeot. Audi is a lap further behind. So the leader Wirtz is on 3:10, McNish is on 3:08. 2 laps difference between first and third. Charouz in the best of the Aston Martins is still fourth. It's the best of the gasoline-powered cars as well. And Orica's Olivier Panis, the former F1 driver, is in the top 5. Justin?
Standing here with the 25 car, which was wheeled back in the pits. I think they're suffering from, they lifted off the rear bodywork. They're suffering from that worst problem that can befall you in any form of racing, and that is the electrical gremlin. They got a misfire of some kind there. They're checking everything on top, but you know, they've just been looking at battery charge, all sorts of little things, and it doesn't appear to be easily traceable. And that, as we all know, is the worst problem to have. And I'm sure we'll see it go out again in a minute, and if the misfire's there again, they'll come back in. So not much, when they're playing with the top of the engine and spark plugs and things, it's a process of elimination, and there's no real science behind it. They just have to change things out until they get it fixed. Guys?
Justin Bell, just like his dad Derek, spark plugs and things. I mean, obviously very, very technical term, that.
So Phil Barker off to the left side of that garage area overseeing, but letting his crew do. And that's the real key. When you get back in the garage, it's like, great, we can have an army of people swarm all over this thing. Well, sometimes you get in each other's way if you have too many people working at the same time.
Seeing plenty of the lead, GT2 car, the Risi Competizione Ferrari. And it's looking good, isn't it? It's being chased by another Ferrari. The best Porsche is American Patrick Long, third in that GT2 class.
Corvette first came to Le Mans in 1960 and tasted success when John Fitch, the tall gentleman, and Bob Grossman won the GT class driving for Briggs Cunningham. Wearing the blue and white colours that traditionally identified American entries in international racing, there were 3 Cunningham Corvettes and 3 pairs of racers. Cunningham and Bill Kimberley Dick Thompson and Fred Windridge, and Fitch and Grossman. In the waning hours of the race, the team's lone remaining car was the Fitch and Grossman Corvette, but its engine was suffering overheating problems and had lost its coolant. Regulations prohibited the team from refilling the radiator. Yankee ingenuity triumphed, however, when the crew packed the engine with ice from the team's catering tent. Driving at reduced speed, the ice-cooled small block V8 powered Fitch and Grossman to an 8th place finish overall. The best by a Corvette until the arrival of Corvette Racing's C5Rs some 40 years later.
And welcome back live to Le Mans, into the waning hours of the 77th running of the Sports Car Endurance Classic. I'm Bob Varsha, back on the mic. My thanks to Lee Diffie, who's going to nurse his voice so that he can come back in the final moments and take you to the checkered flag. Dorsey Schrader alongside, Calvin Fish here as well. There you see the action down in the pit lane. It's been an interesting hour or so here. To coin the old saying, it ain't over until it's over. While we were in break, the race leading number 9 Peugeot of Alex Wurz made a pit stop. The Austrian stayed in the car and returned to the racetrack. The same for the 5th place Team Orica Matmut AIM in the hands of ex-Formula 1 driver Olivier Panis.
And you can add to that the 2nd place number 8 car, the Peugeot, who just left. That was Serzin in there. I think he stayed in. And as well, the Audi, the number 1, Mr. McNish at the wheel, also in the pits, and I would think back out by now. So everybody done with that.
Less than 4.5 hours to go. Just a handful of pit stops remaining before this race will come to a conclusion, and it appears Corvette will write another page of its own here in the record books at Le Mans.
Yeah, just as which one will it be now that they're on a split pit strategy?
Right now, Antonio Garcia leads Olivier Beretta in the 63 and 64 cars. Actually, Garcia shown in the pit right now. There he is. Going to be a driver change. Johnny O'Connell will get back in. O'Connell going for his 4th class victory at Le Mans.
We're going to have to watch where that comes out, Bob, because they were together on the track when the black car pitted, the 64 car, now the 63 car. Yeah.
Justin Bell has more from the pits.
Well, you guys call it very well from your vantage point, I have to say, but right down here on the ground, seeing exactly the choreography of these guys, I think testament is it's a bit like watching one of the top-level tennis players or Tiger Woods in golf. When even at the top of their game, the ability to push hard, to win against, oh, look at that, he almost hit the Ferrari on the way down the pit lane, but he didn't. But you know, the ability of top athletes or top teams to stay at the top, even when their only pressure is themselves, I think is the real tribute to how far this team's developed. As you say, a driver change there, and you'll be able to tell us and the viewers how close I think the 64 car just went by on track. So you must make for some good viewing right now.
Well, we certainly hope that our friends from the World Feed broadcasters will provide us a shot of those 2 Corvettes vying for the lead in class.
There's the 63 car.
Yeah.
Well, there was the 63 car.
Well,
swinging through Tertre Rouge.
I think the 64 is in front.
There it is. The 64 managed to leapfrog its sister car.
And of course, Johnny now on cold tires will have to get up to temperature quickly. And this just almost had a little collision there on pit lane.
It's the Risi Ferrari who leads GT2 coming in for a pit stop. And just exiting, and you got to play nice down pit lane there. Johnny realized that the 64 was coming, wanted to get out there as quickly as he could. Oh, look at this.
Whoa.
The 3 car is off again.
Going up the hill to Dunlop Corner.
Wow.
Well, look at this.
Prema behind the wheel now, I believe.
Well, he had enough presence to keep the throttle buried to get him through the trap.
Yeah, he did. He has not had one of his more successful days. Had a few problems. Look at the damage there.
Now they'll have to fix that, Calvin. I'm sure they're going to be pulled for that.
Yeah, for sure. Particularly as you're not really in the running. You just don't want to have any safety issues and damage the race car any further. So they'll bring him in on this next lap for sure.
It's just been an unlucky run from the beginning for the 3. I just wonder if that can stay on there the whole lap at 200 mile per hour plus.
15th in class, 27th in the overall. Some of these Audi drivers beginning to lose their poise just a little bit. Or Alex Prema, the new generation brought in to replace the likes of Emanuele Pirro and Frank Biela, no longer with the program after years of success here at Le Mans and elsewhere.
Just shows you how much on edge these drivers are when they're driving at the absolute limit. If they just miss their braking point a little bit, get a little bit wrong, suddenly you are off for a ride. They get to the point of no return, Dorsey.
Yeah, definitely do, and it shows how hard everybody's been pushing. Of course, the Peugeots started at the beginning of the race. At the drop of the green, they set a pace that's just been unbelievable. Hadn't it been for the 2 hours of yellow flag in the middle of the night, we'd be well ahead of the record.
Sasha Maassen climbs out of the number 5 Navigo team Porsche RS Spider that has spent the entire 24 hours to this point tossing the lead back and forth with the pole sitting number 31 machine of Team Essex. There's Sebastian Bourdais. What a moment for him. His teammate Alex Wurz has their car out in front, as they have been for hour upon hour now. And a great victory. Le Mans is a wonderful victory for any driver, but for someone like Sebastian Bourdais, born and raised in this town, excuse me, he's not first, he is second. He is co-driving with Sarrazin and Montagny. Sarrazin put the car on pole, but Sebastian Bourdais, whose father Patrick drove in this race on several occasions, would like nothing more than to get to the top step of the podium in his hometown. And look at that sky overhead. We heard that it would rain, then we heard it would not. And the sky suggests that it might well. We could see raindrops before we're done in a little under 4 hours, 20 minutes. Welcome back live to Le Mans, the 77th running. Now a little over 4 hours and 15 minutes remaining, and the tension beginning to rise just a little bit. You ride along with Allan McNish in the number 1 Audi, hoping to keep the streak of Audi's success here at Le Mans alive. But right now they are in 3rd place, 3 laps down to the race-leading Peugeot of Alex Wurz, who is followed by 1 lap by his teammate Stefan Sarrazin. And Sarrazin's teammate Sebastian Bourdais is with Brian Till.
Many of the fans here at Le Mans will root on for Peugeot, but even many more will root for Sebastian Bourdais. Hometown hero. Sebastian, you guys sit 2nd right now, and if you're not allowed to race on the racetrack, will you be allowed to race with pit strategies here? Is that what it'll take to get to the front?
No, I mean, we had big worries about the brakes, and apparently Brembo has recalculated things, and we've been slowing down for nothing, so it's a bit frustrating, but you know, now we're back racing. But something like 4 hours left. It's very evenly matched with Alex, so I don't, not so optimistic about the win, but we'll still give it a try, see what happens.
Who will finish in the 8 car?
Apparently I will. There's 4 stints left after Stefan, so I think I'll finish that.
If you're behind the wheel of that 8 car and it manages to take the lead and the checkered flag here at Le Mans, how special would that be for you?
I don't know, but I'm going to try.
Best of luck. Thank you very much.
Well, we just saw a dramatic moment where Allan McNish just skived by the Peugeot there. That was pretty wild.
Yeah, that was the 8 car.
Yeah.
Sarrazin.
Why would he suddenly slow like that? It was unbelievable. I mean, McNish was on the charge certainly, but looked like Sarrazin suddenly had an issue.
Well, I don't know if he had an issue, if he was just playing it conservative, but I mean, McNish sees that moment and just dove the car in there.
Well, you heard Bourdais refer to the fact that they're concerned about their brakes.
But then he said, no, Brembo have recalculated and we're good to go. And that wasn't a braking zone where he was under acceleration off a corner where Allan just blew by him.
I have to keep an eye on that. I saw Allan catching up and driving quite aggressively, but did look a bit strange where he got just stumbled there.
He's lucky he didn't clobber him, because when you've been following that Peugeot the whole race and it's been a little bit quicker than you, for it to suddenly slow, certainly wake you up at this time of the day.
That would have been awkward.
Allan and it's absolutely got the hammer down. And I know that Tom Christensen did the same thing, and if Dindo finishes this race out, he will do the same. They just got to keep charging 100%. They need all of the little breaks to go their way, and just pray that something slows and just stops the pace of those Peugeots somehow.
Well, they're trying to put the pressure on the Peugeot as far as running fast laps, but the Peugeot has been able to outrun them anytime it wanted to. So it's a bit strange that they're slowing now.
Sarrazan's car looks pretty healthy now. It's not like he's come to a real crawl. He's still keeping the Audi in sight, but that was a dramatic slowing of the car in that part of the racetrack.
Well, you can come to Le Mans in the lap of luxury, or you can be out in the middle of the field under a sleeping bag.
Little espresso first thing in the morning, cigarette.
Yeah, got to have the espresso, cigarette. What could be more French than that?
The daily routine. You maintain that even at the racetrack here at Le Mans.
Right now, that is a, well, is that a parapluie or a parasol? I'm not sure. Nobody else seems to be suggesting rain. Maybe they're just trying to
it's not part of the crowd there.
Keep the sun off.
McNish has really gapped Sarrazin over the course of this half lap since he got by him after the Dunlop S's. And as we complete this lap, see the Aston there. Let's see what happens with Sarrazin. No, he's not coming in, so there's no real issue. It's just a very strange incident there. I can't really put that one together.
You don't suppose he was brake checking McNish, do you?
I don't
trying to delay him.
I don't think you'd want to risk getting taken out yourself when
Absolutely
you're
not
in the mix of things in time to trying to win this race.
So the order is Wirtz and Sarrazin in the two Peugeots, then McNish in the Audi, then Thomas Enget in the first of the Aston Martin Lolas. Olivier Panis in the Oreca is fifth. Nicholas Prost, son of Alain Prost, runs in sixth place. Then Charles Waltzman, Christian Klein in another Peugeot. We'll take another break and return as the clouds continue to build over Le Mans and the tension continues to ratchet up. Welcome back live to Le Mans on the Mulsanne straightaway. Riding on the race leading Peugeot. Some of the mechanics who have been working awfully hard over the last 20 hours. Some of those guys were falling asleep shortly after the race began. They've been working so hard keeping their cars ready to go through practice and qualifying. A lot of long nights here in north central France. But in a few short hours, it will all begin to pay off. Right now, let's go down to the pit lane. Chris Neville standing by with American driver Patrick Long.
Well, while some of those mechanics might be resting, the Matt Munn guys here on this Porsche not resting. You got guys working at the back end of the car, guys up front here cleaning it up. Now, Pat, we know you had clutch problems throughout the night. What's going on right now?
Well, basically, we've had a full gearbox failure finally. We knew there was a small chance of that, but we were fighting. We were strong in contention for a podium amongst a bunch of Ferraris. I told them that sixth gear was starting to come apart and it was going to get ugly. Should I nurse it home and bring a safe fourth or fifth? And they said, no, we want a podium or destroy the thing. So it didn't take much longer than that. But, we all roundtabled, the guys from Porsche in Germany, myself, and our French team here with IMSA Performance. And you just can't tell these mechanics that we're done. They want it so bad, and there's a lot of fight left in us. So we're going to work as long as we can until the ACO says to put it away, and we'll see what happens.
It's great you're not giving up. Hey, earlier this week, you, Brian, and I were talking, and you were saying you were looking at your career here in front of you and looking at guys like Scott Pruitt and David Brabham and saying, man, I just want to look like those guys in the years to come?
Yeah, Ron Fellows, Sasha Mawson, guys who exert a lot of leadership. They're fast in the car, they're approachable outside the car, but they're team players. I think there's a lot of drivers out there that have been brilliant, they've been fast and just so successful, but they haven't had something that stuck out to me as an aspiring driver. To make it a household name, I think you got to be a guy that can carry a team, can bring a new teammate like Patrick Pilet here this weekend, or Richard Leitz in the last couple of years. It's a lot of fun for me to have a little bit of a big brother role, because usually I'm the new guy and Sasha is leading me through, or Jörg is leading me through, so it's been great to give that back. But certainly when I look at a guy like Brabham or Pruitt, Sasha or Ron, that's what they do, and I really, really respect that.
You know, about 15 years ago, I was an instructor at the Bob Bondurant School, and I remember you coming through one day. You were just a teenager at the time, go-karting and trying to go into Formula cars, heading over to Europe. Was it hard to give up the Formula cars you were looking at that point in time and go sports car racing?
Maybe at the time I had to think about it a little bit, but guys like Bob Bondurant, Danny Sullivan, Bobby Rahal, I name them all the time. These are the guys that were willing to pick up the phone to me as an aspiring racing driver at 16 years old. And when I told them I had this opportunity to join Porsche, they all had the same answer for me. They're like, sign the contract. These guys are winners, they're loyal, you're going to race for a long time, and you're going to have a great career if you can get with a manufacturer like this. And I've never looked back, I've never been more happy, and I hope to make a long career with Porsche. They put their name behind me, and I want to deliver to them every time I get a chance.
Well, I'm sorry it's ended this way for you guys, but I'm sure we'll see you in the years to come, bud.
Yeah, we'll be back. Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys. Unofficially 15 cars out of the race now. The 55 we started. We saw Marc Gené looking up at the timing and scoring monitors.
I think that Pat really represents the ultimate young professional race car driver in terms of how he deals with media. He talked about following really good advice, and he's really trying to broaden his scope a little bit, Dorsey. We were at Watkins Glen last week covering the Rolex Grand Am race, and he was there in a stock car race and led with like a couple of corners to go before he got roughed up. Imagine that. But
typical stock car racing.
He said, what do you think? Should I be doing this? I said, absolutely. Drive everything you can, get as much experience as you can, because you never know where your career will ultimately lead to, and getting that seat time now is important.
Interesting watching Stefan Sarrazin in the cockpit of his Peugeot. You saw his hands up off the steering wheel. Tommy Kendo used to say, all racing drivers are Italian. We all talk with our hands when we're just driving the car. Sarrazin's in the car by himself, talking on the radio and waving his hands at 200+ miles an hour.
And I tell you what, he's probably looking at the man in front of him, Alan McNish, who's behind him in terms of race position, but went by him a few laps ago. Alan just turned the fastest lap of the race for that #1 Audi, a 3:26.6. Now we're getting down to the zone of what the Peugeots have been running. Forget the 8 car, a 3:24.8, but the lead's fastest lap is a 3:26.0. McNish now within 0.6 of that.
Oh, nowhere to go now. That's a roadblock moving.
Boy, oh boy. Maybe that was what Sarrazin was gesturing about. There's a little bit of hand waving. That'll happen.
Paul Drayson was behind the wheel of the 87. The green Vantage there was on the left side of the road as Sarrazin came through there.
Let's get an update on the Corvette situation with program manager Doug Feehan. He's with Justin Bell.
Well, I mean, the big news is you're first and second in class. Wow. Okay, let's move past that, Doug, because the quiet confidence of your team is really impressive. It has been every time the cars come in. But I want a bigger perspective from you. As someone that doesn't exactly deal with the strategy, but certainly has an overview of how to win races, what would you do? How do you think this Peugeot-Audi battle is going to play out? If you were running either of those teams, how would you be controlling it?
Well, quite frankly, if I were Peugeot right now, I'd be focusing on how not to make any mistakes, because quite clearly what occurs in this event, more often than not, is those that make the fewest mistakes emerge victorious. And I think we saw a little bit of that last year when Peugeot struggled. We actually saw a little bit of it demonstrated earlier in the race where they struggled a bit. Audi has not been without its travails. So when you look at the data at the end of an event, you talk about strategy. We look at strategy. Our strategy is get them out there, hammer them from the get-go. But the reality of it is, the more time you spend in this pit lane, the less opportunity you have to win. And ultimately, when you look at those that are victorious, they're always those people that are not the fastest. They're those that spend the fewest amount of minutes in the pit lane. So that's what I'd be doing. I'd be focusing on my pit lane work.
I love the way you said in 10 words what I think you summed up in 3 to me earlier about what they had to do. And you know what I mean, guys.
Yes.
But when you move forward from here? I mean, obviously everyone's sitting at home. We're dwelling on the positives. We've got a great little GT2 car and things. You're maintaining that test program. The guys at Pratt & Miller they're still pushing hard.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was quite a challenge for us this year in designing and engineering and building a new car, along with continuing to race and prepare for this event. And I think thus far, anyway, I think we've demonstrated to all the viewers at home that we're very serious about every time we show up at this place. I mean, we're 4 hours away from the finish, and we got cars within seconds of one another. That's pretty hard to do.
That is hard to do, and I think Doug's only disappointment this week is that Patrick Dempsey has taken some of the light off his fan frenzy that he normally casts. But you will get over it, and maybe you'll get a role in a movie. Maybe you'll be the patient in one of his episodes.
Well, quite frankly, the only reason Patrick showed up was to be able, because he knew there was an abundance of those fans here, and he figured he could,
He had to lighten your load. Back to you. God, we're trouble.
Please.
Maybe you're patient.
That's beautiful.
Oh, my.
Watching in replay, checking the class leaders, which has become an hourly tradition here from the host broadcasters.
We're back to slamming curbs again.
And that's the 64 Vet, which is shown right now with call it an 18-second gap. Olivier Beretta back to Johnny O'Connell. And there is that Ricci Ferrari really banging the curbs. And that young gentleman is absolutely mesmerized by the action on the track.
I agree with his thoughts.
It's been a long day in more ways than one, but we're less than 4 hours from the finish. So stick around. Maybe Mother Nature will have something to say about who wins the 77th Le Mans.